Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Today is one of those days that I think a lot of us have been waiting for a very, very long time. We are pretty green in the pre-market. S&P is up 2.65%. Palantir's up, Nvidia's up, Robinhood's up, Broadcom's up, Google's up, Amazon's up. I mean, you name it, it's probably green in the pre-market. Grab is up 8.46%. Hims is up 5%. Estee Lauder is up 5%. Tesla's up 5%. Microsoft up 3%. Bitcoin just below 72,000. What's down? Well, VG is down 12%. Venture Next Decade's down 12%. XLE's down 5%. You're getting all your energy names that are down for good reasons. Everything else is making a move. Nebius, 8%. SoFi, 9%. Robinhood, 9%. Broadcom, 4%. Reddit, 5%. This is one of those days, at least so far in the pre-markets. We're going to see what ends up happening in the next 40 minutes when the market opens. That has been so far a positive reaction to the developments of last night. I was on extra long for the market close. I think the market close ended up going 4 hours, and we ended up having some breaking news in the middle of it, and we covered it. What was the breaking news? For those that have officially not heard the news, the United States and Iran have entered into a ceasefire. 2-week ceasefire. Trump said our military objectives are complete. Iran has to keep the Strait open for the next 2 weeks for this to be a dual-sided ceasefire. Iran put out a statement last night saying they also accept the ceasefire. And they said if attacks against Iran are halted, our powerful armed forces will cease their defensive operations. And for a period of 2 weeks, safe passage via the Strait of Hormuz will be possible. There is a lot to analyze, a ton to go through in terms of how this is playing out, what happened, the reaction to prices, and ultimately the stock market adding basically $1.65 trillion of market capitalization, at least right here in the pre-market. And I think there's also going to be a lot of questions that people have about, hey, all right, is it real? Are we back? Can you trust it? Does it actually make sense? Is this just a quote unquote dead cat bounce, or is there something more legitimate to what's going on right here? And I think those are very fair questions. Those are important questions, and navigating all those questions and at least providing some different perspectives towards why, both sides potentially have a point right here, I think is going to be important. So we'll talk about it. But man, oh man, does it feel good for the first time in a while. We did have a 3% day last week. And maybe it's because we just got way too oversold, but that 3% day was more so a recovery from the absolute lows we got to, I think, 630. For all intended purposes, Monday last week was the bottom. I mean, unless we go back there, and I'm very curious to see what people think on if we go back there again. But if we don't, then, we're not going straight up to 7,000, but I don't think we're easily going back down to those 630s. And as a result, the entire market theoretically could have bottomed, even if it's not a massive V-shape. So this 2.6% move, which might turn into a 3% move, which is not easy for the S&P to move 3% in a day, it feels a little bit more legit than the move we had last week. And as a result, it might usher us into a era in 2026 where we don't have to worry about this. Now, there's still tons of things to worry about, and we'll talk about all those different things: rate cuts, labor market, inflation, etc. But the fact that oil, which is another reason I feel like this is a lot more legit, oil is down. We are looking at, let me pull it up exactly, I believe 90 on crude. Last week when we got the rally and oil didn't go down, it didn't really feel as real. Now that we're actually seeing oil come down, which is what you need to see in order for things to keep moving, 92 on crude, down 18%. Yeah, it feels more legit. It feels more legit because obviously that means the equity markets are pricing in that this war is going to come to an end. Oil is going to go back to normal, or at least relatively normal compared to where it was over the past couple of weeks. And maybe the equity markets will get the benefit of that. But there are cascading questions. There are different headlines that we have to talk about. We don't even know if this ceasefire is actually going to stay in place in the way that people think it's in place. You already have reports of missiles and drones going off across the region. And so it is something to obviously discuss in order to keep going from there. So let's get into it. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hopefully this is one that actually sticks, and if it does stick, we're going to get a lot of momentum. But if it doesn't stick, obviously we're going to be stuck in the chop, and maybe we are not going to be stuck in the chop if this actually has some room to move to the upside. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's just talk about price action real quick, and then we'll get into the analysis of the war last night. I'm going to put a poll in the chat. Do you believe in this green? I think yesterday when I asked the same version of this question, it was 50-50. Crude is not 71. Google is showing a mistake. Google Finance, this is a freaking $3 trillion company, and they still make mistakes on this. Crude is not $71. I don't know why Google is showing that, but that is a mistake right now. Crude is 92.73. Google needs to get their shit together. If we were at 71 on crude oil, oh my, I mean, I think we'd be probably way above 7,000 if we were there. So we're not 71 yet, but hopefully soon. So yesterday, this question that I asked was sort of it ended up breaking down into two factions of personalities around the stock market. The first faction was, I don't believe any of this. Trump says he's going to bomb a whole civilization. There's no way you can trust it, yada, yada, yada. The typical kind of like, I'm afraid Trump is crazy, therefore I'm not going to be excessively buying equities, and I potentially might be even selling my equities. And then there was the other faction, which is he's going to taco. and that's really, I think, not even just yesterday, but for the past couple of weeks, I guess throughout the month of March, it was those two elements of the market in terms of market participants. Either you believed he was going to taco and it wasn't that big of a deal, and maybe you bought the dip here and there, but you didn't go crazy buying the dip because you still wanted some certainty. Or there was, I'm not touching the markets. I'm not going to, if anything, I'm going to hedge. I'm going to get more puts, more covered calls, more cautiously optimistic behavior just in case that he gets a bit more aggressive. And I think both perspectives were relatively okay to have. It's just a question of how much did you believe in the extent of what this was going to happen. And I think, a lot of people also yesterday said, is he really going to drop tons of bombs on civilians that are, putting themselves together on bridges and just ruin the energy infrastructure for tens of millions of people in Iran? Like it seemed a bit dramatic. The hyperbole in his language also usually has been used in situations in which he ends up not following through. And it was funny because there was a lot of MAGA diehards that were like, no, he's going to bomb, like he's going to finish the job, yada, yada. And he doesn't. So you had a lot of people on the left that were like, we can't trust him, he's going to bomb. Then you have a lot of MAGA diehards saying, well, he's telling us he's going to bomb, he's going to actually do it. And then you had more reasonable people saying, well, historically, every time he's made these types of threats, he hasn't followed through. And what do you know? By the end of yesterday, he didn't end up following through. And part of the reason for that is because you had the Pakistani PM come in. Pakistan must be feeling pretty good about themselves today. That has brokered, theoretically, this sort of peace deal. They said right here, diplomatic efforts for peaceful settlement of the ongoing war in the Middle East are progressing steadily, strongly, and powerfully. To allow diplomacy to run its course, I earnestly request President Trump to extend the deadline for 2 weeks. And markets started pricing this in a couple hours before it officially came out. And then, by around, call it 5:30, 6 p.m., CNN reported they have very valid sources that are telling them that there's going to be a ceasefire. And then what do you know? There ended up being a ceasefire right here. So the question, I think, for the majority of people is, do you trust this green? And well, it should be a better day to trust this green than it was yesterday or over the past couple of weeks, because we have some level of a resolution, at least for now. Now, you might be in the camp that says this is not resolution, this is going to be worse, the ceasefire doesn't even make sense. I'm getting a headline right here from the Financial Times that Iran is demanding $1 per barrel on oil transiting through the Strait of Hormuz, payment to be made in cryptocurrency. I wonder if they accept Farcoin. But headlines like that make you think, well, this is not really a ceasefire, and Iran has become even more powerful, and President Trump did this for no reason, yada, yada. And I think all of that analysis is valid and worthy of being respected. However, I think a lot of that analysis dwells down into political analysis, your political opinion on why this war happened, if it was necessary, how Iran looks, how the United States looks. Economically, if the Strait of Hormuz is open, we have de-risked a vast majority of the reason for why people, would be bearish, or at least why markets would be bearish. I should say markets more generally, because this is the price action you're seeing right here, up 2.6% on the S&P. And so I think this move that we're seeing right here is deserved. I've been saying consistently for the past few weeks that if you really want to allocate capital, but you also want some safety because it's hard-earned capital and you're willing to pay a little bit of a higher price, even if you don't catch the exact bottom, then waiting for a day like this, for confirmation like this, is the point, right? Like, you don't need to get the absolute bottom because you also need to be able to sleep well at night, but you also don't want to completely be on the sidelines, so you need a signal. Question is today that signal?
I think to a large extent, it probably is. Now, does that mean we go straight V-shaped to 8,000 on the S&P? Probably not. But does that mean we are going back to those Monday lows? I don't think so. It is hard for me to imagine that unless this war re-continues in the next 2 weeks, which theoretically it could, that we get back there. I think the U.S. wants to end it. I think Iran wants to end it. I don't know how much Israel wants to end it. Israel actually came out yesterday saying we don't really support this ceasefire, but President Trump calls the shots. That's verbatim what they said, so we will comply with it. So, there's a lot more aggression that potentially could be created right here. And there's a lot of geopolitical analysts that have come out over the past 24 hours saying, oh, this is bullshit and this is just a way to buy time and it's not actually real. But if you kind of have a more optimistic view that the Strait will be opened after the next 2 weeks and the Iranians are not going to shut it down. And now, whether you like it or not, the Iranians have proven they not only have sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, and there's no way they're giving that up in any of the negotiations. Maybe they'll give up some of their nuclear programs, at least symbolically, but they're not giving up the Strait. Now the Iranians know they can stop the entire world for multiple weeks at a time. At this point, they did it for a month and a half because of their stranglehold over oil, as they control 20% of it flowing through. So the Iranians theoretically, feel that they have more power, but I also think the Iranians understand that there's a lot of money that they can be made, even if they charge extra fees or they potentially use this as a negotiating form to get some of the sanctions relief, which I do think the U.S. is going to give them as a sign of goodwill in these negotiations, which means they're going to make more money. And I think the Iranians at the end of the day want to make more money. They want to have a better thriving economy. The dictatorship, if that regime stays in place, which I don't think it's going away anytime soon, also wants to be able to generate more money. Rocket Lab right there up 7% pre-markets. And as a result, they also want the Strait open. And the United States obviously wants the Strait open as well. So I think in the next 2 weeks, the Strait will probably be open. We are not going to go back to bombing each other, which means if that's the case, I think today is a day to not get too upset to buy. I think today's a bull trap. See, the logic behind a bull trap, and I've been thinking about this for the past 24 hours because I've also had to make a decision on if I am going to kind of deploy some of the capital in my retirement account. And again, it's retirement at the end of the day. So, once you buy, at least for something like this, I don't look at it. I have made the decision to deploy, and it will be deployed today. So I will share this right here. People should be able to see this. You've got all these pending market buys. We got 10,000 in Grab, which, by the way, Grab had a very big event last night that we will be talking about. And then we have 2,500 across the board in those other 10 stocks that I mentioned: AMD, Broadcom, Robinhood, Palantir, Rocket Lab, NVIDIA, Oracle, Meta, Google. And as we add more money to the account throughout the rest of the year, we'll add in the Amazons and stuff in the world. But I'm letting it go today. Is it the most perfect price? Probably not. Is it the absolute bottom? Of course not. Is it the top and we're going back to those Monday prices? I don't think so. I don't. I don't think we revisit Broadcom under 300 the way I got it, even if it was only with $250 last Monday. And if we do revisit it, then it is what it is. Like, at some point you have to take your shot and you can't be on the sidelines forever. But I think this is enough confirmation to say this is not an effective bull trap. And I understand the bull trap concerns, but if oil continues to be below, let's say 90, we're at 92, so we're not fully there yet, but let's say we hover around that 90 to 93 range and then we eventually go below 90. I don't think we get to 80 anytime soon, but that 87, 88 is not crazy to imagine. Then I think it's not a bull trap, because at the end of the day, the market has never cared about the politics of this war or Iranian liberation or nuclear weapons. They only cared about the Strait of Hormuz being opened. And I think oil has a lot lower to go. I mean, look at American Airlines today. We talked about the airlines being one of the biggest beneficiaries, 11% up on the day. United Airlines up 12.5% up on the day. Delta actually had a really good earnings. Delta's up 12.5%. We'll talk about their earnings in a second. Delta is up as well. You've got the cruise lines that are getting some of the benefit. Why? Because as oil prices go down, their input costs go down as well. So you've got Carnival making a move right here, up 10.6%. This doesn't feel as aggressively bearish as some people would, think it could be. Having said that, let's do the opposite perspective. And let's talk a little bit more about, what could be bearish about it. But I am very curious to see if people think they believe the screen. The only thing I bought, for those that are asking, during this whole tariff dip, which ironically wasn't even a tariff dip, Iran dip. I didn't even buy it for the Iran dip. I bought it for SpaceX, is Rocket Lab. So I said about Rocket Lab last week. It was like Sunday night, Monday morning. That is the position. 1,100 shares at 66.87. So this was not meant to be an Iran dip to buy. This was meant to be a SpaceX play, and I continue to believe it's a SpaceX play. Now, obviously, Rocket Lab is super high beta, so the high beta nature of Rocket Lab is why it's getting the benefit right here, because it's like Reddit, it's like Robinhood, it's like Palantir. Like, those stocks just go crazy when we get high beta momentum. I am planning to hold on to that for SpaceX. I have a long-term Rocket Lab position. This is more of a trading position. I want to sell this at $100. I still think Rocket Lab is a bit expensive here, but I do think the SpaceX IPO potentially could create a liquidity event that is massive, and I'd rather play that through Rocket Lab versus buying the SpaceX IPO. So the exit here is for 100, and maybe by June, July, if SpaceX has this massive event, that ends up happening. But outside of that, I have not really seriously bought this Iran dip because I was waiting for confirmation that things would be better, and I think today potentially gives you that confirmation. Palantir right there, up 3.6% of the pre-market. Now, the bear case here is that selling calls and or selling into this green is better, right? Selling calls or selling into this green is better. And I still am of the belief that if you are buying stuff today, like if you're buying Micron, by the way, 9% right there at 411. If you're buying, I don't know, let's do Amazon. If you're buying 100 shares of Amazon today, and you want to get more exposure to Amazon, and you didn't get it at 200, but you are getting it at 221, and you're not that upset about it. So you put 22 grand into Amazon. I don't think it's crazy to sell the Amazon 230 call. You don't have to be crazy aggressive and sell the 225 call, but I don't think it's crazy to be like, look, I am buying into this, but I also want a little bit more confirmation that it's actually going to end. And until it ends, I'm going to hedge my bets a little bit. And by hedging those bets, I'm going to take a cautiously optimistic stance that we are not going straight to the moon, that Amazon, which probably deserves to be closer to 240, is not just going to V-shape all the way up to 240. And the extent of the move in the pre-markets has already happened. And maybe there's a little bit more move to happen, but that move is not going to be absolutely crazy. However, I think being selective on that is important. Meta was a $740 stock. Meta went to 520. Meta in the pre-markets at 605. Would I sell a $615 call? No. Would I sell a $650 call? Yeah. And so I think this is a great opportunity to collect more premium and be able to hedge some of the positions if you are entering long here. I also think if you don't have covered calls on any of your positions, or you have some excess capital that you would like to dispose of, selling calls here isn't that crazy. Because could we reverse this entire 2%? Yes. My bet is we don't reverse the entire 5%, which would get us back down to those Monday lows and take us to 630. And if that doesn't happen, then I think we're in a much better understanding from this here as well. Rocket Lab right here, that's green. Palantir is still green. Robinhood's green. I mean, a name like Robinhood, right, getting that momentum, 75.59 up 8%. Nothing changed in Robinhood's business. Literally nothing has changed. Bitcoin, yeah, it's at 72, but that doesn't warrant an 8% move on Hood. The reason it's getting this move is because the perception from the market is that retail is going to come back, that trading volumes are going to go crazy. And oil doesn't necessarily affect Robinhood, but it definitely affects the market, and the market obviously affects Robinhood. And so that's being priced in. I am very curious today in the next 25 minutes to see if this lasts. If the market still believes in this to the level and extent that they believe in this. Zeta's up 6%. Firefly's up 7%. I think they announced a partnership with NVIDIA this morning. We'll talk about that. Kratos is up 7%. Ondas, even the drone stocks that you would think would go down because the war is over, so there might not be that much demand. I think they're benefiting, A, from the high beta nature of their volatility, but B, because, yeah, the war is over, but I think this war has proved, or the war is potentially over, but the war has proved that we need a lot more autonomous weapons. I think Anduril is more valuable today in the private markets than it was yesterday, even if the war is over, because the ability to essentially reindustrialize has now become more important. And I think we are now entering a world in which Iran has gained a lot of power by recognizing how much control they have over the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump's probably going to want an even higher defense budget in the face of that. So you've got a lot of names that are still getting the benefit from this war, even if the war theoretically is over, and the high beta nature of their stocks is also giving them some love. Microsoft, which was basically in a bear market, bottomed at 357. We're at 384. Microsoft still, does Microsoft at 384 feel expensive compared to where Microsoft was last week? Not really. Yeah, it's not at 350, but okay, it's not, at 450 right now. It's at 380. Same thing with Meta. Meta at 520, obviously dirt cheap. Meta at 600, down from 750, still doesn't feel like a bad deal. So I think a lot of these names that have been able to make a 3-4% move in the past 24 hours, they are still incredibly attractive. And now you get to buy them with a bit more certainty. The price of being able to buy them for that certainty obviously is higher, but that's also part of the reason why, you get to take a little bit more risk off the table. So I think this is the question. Do you trust the green? Do you believe that green is real? And if you don't believe that green is real, you don't buy. It's just that simple. That's the beauty of a market. If you don't believe this green is real, stay on the sidelines, because we're probably going back lower. If you think the ceasefire has a bit more momentum than you do, and I think this, I'm going to take a picture of this right here in the chat, because this is exactly
what I mean in terms of sentiment and the nature of this. So Gumza2 at 906 says war is not over. Chad Allen 8490 at 906 says war is over. You either believe it's over or you don't believe it's over. And that, I think, dictates the ability for capital to come through. What happens when the inflation numbers come out for shit tomorrow and Friday? The inflation numbers are going to be horrible, but remember, the market, I hate to say this, but it is what it is. The market is overlooking, is forward looking, right? And so the market now understands, all right, inflation is going to be bad, but if we can price in that April's numbers are going to be a lot better, which theoretically, if the war has come to an end and crude ends up dropping to that 85 level, CPI is going to go down, even though it's going to go up in March. I think the market will be able to look past this. And we've seen this happen many times in 2024. If you were there, we would have a crappy month, but we would have a lot of data suggesting the next month will be better. And the market would just wave off the crappy nature of the first month of data that we were getting. So yes, we are not out of the woods, but in terms of a signal for things to get a lot better, today might be one of the days that at least initiates that. Let's look at Hegseth. He was live this morning, and here was his response on some of the stuff that we ended up doing.
Calling on people.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Yesterday in the President's Truth Social, he threatened to wipe out a civilization. That statement elicited a huge response in America. If Iran did not come to the table and make a deal yesterday by the deadline, was the president really prepared to wipe out Iran entirely?
Like I said, we had a target set, locked and loaded, of infrastructure, bridges, power plants. Remember, this is a terror regime, military regime. Use all of these things for dual use to fund their military, to fund their terror campaigns. We had a lot of legitimate targets. They knew exactly the scope of what we were capable of. We hit some military targets on Karg, which is a bit of a signal. They can't defend it. And so Iran ultimately understood their ability, their future to produce, to generate power, to fuel their terrorist regime was in our hands, was in President Trump's hands. That's why they came to the table. He ultimately said, we can take it all from you. Your ability to export energy will be taken away. And the United States military has the ability to strike those things with impunity. That type of threat is what brought them to the place where they effectively say, hey, okay, we want to cut this deal.
Okay, so that is how Hegseth is framing the decision. I think the Iranians would say that we held our own so strongly in the context of the Strait of Hormuz that the United States was more eager to negotiate with us than we were eager to be afraid of the United States bombing our civilian targets. And you know, both sides have a claim to the legitimacy of their message. From the Iranian perspective, it's pretty obvious. You know, does the United States want to look like a global actor that's throwing bombs on people in bridges, even if those people are paid by the Iranian government or being forced to be there? Like, does the United States really want to do that? I would imagine no. And then in the context of the Iranians, do they want to keep missing out on tons of money they could be collecting if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, because that's how they fund their economy? Probably no. So both sides have probably had enough of this to an extent, whether you agree with how it was done politically. And that's what got them to the table. Or maybe Pakistan was such a good intermediary that it was able to muster up this discussion. The more I think about it and the more I read about it, I think this ceasefire was set in place 2 nights ago. Like, if you really start doing some of the due diligence around it, I think the media was getting a lot of conflicting headlines. And this doesn't happen in a couple hours. Like, this was probably agreed to a couple of days ago, but Trump wanted to keep building up the attention the way that he always does. And then at the last minute, he knew that he wasn't actually going to like go crazy with the bombs. And the Iranians knew that as well, which ended up leading to this potential agreement. The question is, will this lead, this 2 weeks lead to 2 months and then 2 years and then hopefully 2 decades of peace? And that's where I think people are a bit more skeptical of.
You see, had Iran refused our terms, the next targets would have been their power plants, their bridges, and oil and energy infrastructure. Targets they could not defend and could not realistically rebuild. It would have taken them decades, and we were locked and loaded. They couldn't defend against it. President Trump had the power to cripple Iran's entire economy in minutes, but he chose mercy. He spared those targets because Iran accepted the ceasefire under overwhelming pressure.
Again, that is the United States way of framing it. The Iranians will disagree. The Iranians already have been putting out statements to their media saying that, we've been
we defeated the United States and we forced them to leave, all this stuff. So both sides are having their own argument in terms of how they play this out. Now, the most interesting thing about what Trump said yesterday, which was, I think, more important than the actual ceasefire itself, which again makes me believe that this guy knew that he was never going to seriously attack. I mean, this statement in itself, when you really read between the lines, it doesn't seem like it's as aggressive. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Every time Trump has had to make a deal or have some level of negotiations, he's always been flexible and open to, hearing the other side and making the actual deal. I do not think he got this 10-point proposal 2 hours before the deal was announced. I think he got it 2 days before, and they've just been holding it in reserves until they could finally make the argument that they can negotiate from. And the question is, will they be able to meaningfully negotiate? The 10 points, by the way, are full ceasefire or full end to the war, not just the ceasefire. Allow us to keep enriching our nukes, reparations, sanctions relief, pay for the damages, all that stuff. Trump's not going to agree to all that, obviously, but the Iranians are also not going to, I think, expect him to agree to all that. So that's what happens in negotiation. There's going to be one side that comes to the table. The other side has the different perspective, and they try to find the best potential deal that they can make in this. I feel in the next 2 weeks, we know how much Trump loves to make a deal. We know it. Like, regardless of what you think about the guy, and this is why I think this green is a little bit more real than not. He loves announcing these big deals and making, ironically, a big deal out of the big deal, and having a massive press conference and basically acting like he saved the day. Now, again, you might think he hasn't saved anything because he got into this for no reason. That's, again, a political belief. But the point is, if that's what he wants to do, and we have a history of him feeling like he wants to do that every time, then I don't know if this is going to be that different. I think in 2 weeks, both sides can figure something out. And one side would be, okay, give us some sanctions relief. The other side would be, don't close the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe give up some of your nukes, even if it's symbolic. And, they come together and we get something done. Like, I don't think in the next 2 weeks, they're just going to go back to intensely bombing each other. And if that happens, it happens. It is what it is. And no one can necessarily predict this. But from the historical data we have, it seems like it's more real than not. And if that's the case, then I think this green is more real. And that's how the market is pricing this in. With oil coming down, it gives me a lot more confidence in this green. The green also doesn't feel euphoric. Don't tell me NVIDIA at 184 is euphoric. It's not. Like, it's just not. NVIDIA should be a $230 stock right now. Meta at 600 is not euphoric. Microsoft at 384 is nowhere near euphoric. Google at 300, not euphoric. At Google, actually 318. Wow. Dude, Google was 270 last week. It's now almost 320. But a lot of this stuff is still undervalued. I mean, Google's about to make $120 billion on their SpaceX stake. Their Anthropic stake is worth was it 80 billion or something? And that company's probably going to go public. So, there's just a lot of momentum for these names that have been in a downtrend or have got traded sideways since October. So could we see the volume that is necessary to justify a breakout? Maybe. Time will tell. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to be very curious to see how the algos treat it. But the idea that we go back to 270 on Google easily, could we go back to 300? Sure, it could lose 1% or 2%, but could we go back to 270, lose 7-8%? I just think that's a little unlikely on a day where the market seems to have a bit more confirmation of a real ceasefire. Iran's up 9%, CoreWeave's up 7%, IBIT's up 5%, Fubo's up 5%. You got all your photonics plays that are moving: Bitcoin, Ethereum, BMNR, AppLovin's up 6%, Netflix back above 100. Now we got to see if it sticks. But it does feel more than not that there is a chance for this to meaningfully stick. So what are people doing? Put in the chat. Are people buying here? Are people selling here? Are we selling covered calls? How are people navigating this? Obviously, if you already have covered calls, like I do have on some positions, you're going to have to roll. My simple philosophy on rolling is very simple. Either do you want to keep the shares or do you not want to keep the shares? If you want to keep the shares and you have to add multiple months to your roll, but you get a higher strike, then that's what you do. And you give up collecting the premium per week or per month in order to be able to get access to the shares. I don't really think, unless you're super underwater, you have to buy back the shares. I mean, there should be plenty of strikes, and we're only April in the year, and there should be plenty of weeks and months where you should be able to roll out to. But if you're super scared that Robinhood's going to go to 120, then yes, you can buy them back and take the loss and just wait for the stock to go up. However, I think rolling here is not going to be that crazy. So, if you're in Robinhood calls at 75 and the stock's at 76, I think you can roll it effectively to 85 a month later, and you're going to be okay. If you think Robinhood's going to 100, then obviously you want to, roll it out multiple months and get to 100. But I don't think you're going to see that crazy V shape, because we also didn't fall crazy. We were down 8.6%, the most on the S&P, whereas last year we were down 30%, which is why we had that massive V, up 30% in the next 6 months. Look, could Robinhood get to like 85, 90 from here? Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. And I think the S&P probably settles in around that 680, 690 level, which also would be similar to where it was last time. Sachin says, no covered calls, only stocks long, no options. Don't want to be caught in theta decay in case it stays sideways. Zokold says, I'm buying Oscar, sold calls on VG at 18, 19, 20, bought Amazon. Oscar CEO, by the way, bought freaking $1 million worth of his stock yesterday, which I don't care who you are. You buy a million shares, not $1 million. So he spent $12 million yesterday, 11.92 million. Bullish, right? I don't know that much about the business, but a CEO actually putting 12 million into his own stock, that's a significant amount of money for anybody. So I did think that was nice to see. Don Bell says, waiting for the profit takers to start the day. Alzi says, I'm going to be rolling. Covered calls for more weekly premium. So it seems like people are still cautiously optimistic. I see a lot of people saying I'm going to take some profits. A lot of people saying I'm going to sell some covered calls, which I do not think is crazy. Again, the question is going to be, how large does this rally actually manifest into? Or is it a range-bound rally, or is it a full head fake? And would it surprise anybody if this is a full head fake, if NVIDIA goes down 4% when the market opens? I don't think it would be surprising, given the past 2 months of data only tells us that we go up and down and up and down, and we stay so choppy. But it would be the markets essentially saying they don't believe the ceasefire. And given the pre-market action, given the action on oil, obviously it seems like the markets are more likely to believe the ceasefire than not. So we got to see. I see a lot of mixed comments in the chat. Some people saying they believe it's real. A lot of people saying they don't believe it's real. 70% of you still on that poll believe in this green, which is different from the 50-50 yesterday on do you think Trump is going to attack. So it seems like the ceasefire is giving people a lot more comfort, at least in the short term, that this is going to be okay. And now we just need to wait for a deal. Again, just logically thinking about how Trump likes to present himself to the media when these situations arise. He likes to be seen as the savior, the guy that's won it all. That's just his personality when you really psychoanalyze how he thinks about this stuff. And he builds up a lot of hype only to not really follow through many times. And in this case, he's pissing off like a lot of his core base that wants him to attack. And he's also pissing off the left that expected him to, start World War III, because if that's not happening because we have a ceasefire, then they can't really complain about that right now. And so the only thing he's really helping are the markets that have just been waiting for oil to come down. And if he can extend this from 2 weeks, I really don't think Trump, which has been reported widely from every media outlet, looking for an off-ramp. You have some of his closest advisors saying that he wants an off-ramp, including JD Vance. I do not think in 2 weeks this guy wants to go back to bombing Iran. I think he wants to announce that he created a big, beautiful deal and he figured this stuff out. And I guess time is going to tell to see if this happens. What VIX do we get to in the coming weeks? So the VIX, theoretically, I would imagine today is going to have a 10% down day. Sorry, we're down 21% in the pre-market on VIX. So, I mean, if we can get back to VIX 15, that would be nice. We're at VIX 20 right now. Again, I think we got to VIX 32 at the top. We didn't even get to VIX 60 like we did last year in April. So again, the volatility did not reach those crazy, crazy levels. But I think 15 would not be that crazy. Tax season profit taking will be aggressive. That is also fair. So you might have some people use this as an event to take profits to pay their taxes, which is not too crazy. But still, the sheer amount of money that's on the sidelines, I mean, if that money decides to come play, I mean, there's $8 trillion on the sidelines. I would imagine some of that $8 trillion doesn't think Meta is the most expensive stock in the world, fear and greed at 22. But they weren't going to buy Meta at 520 because it looked like a falling knife going all the way to 400. But Meta at 600 with confirmation that it's probably not going back down to 520 might be a lot more attractive to some of that money that is on the sidelines. And so I wonder if that money comes out to play. And if that also gives it some more momentum. Mark Newton says a run up to all-time highs. I did see that this morning. This is Tom Lee's technical strategist. I mean, look, I know people are going to hate me saying this, but Tom Lee did say we would bottom in March, and March 30th. I mean, so far, if that was the bottom, which it looks like that might have been, then maybe there is a little bit more momentum to the upside. So look, that's the update we got from last night. It seems more bullish than it's a weird thing because people want to be bullish, but they're also not bullish. And I get it, because everyone is so emotionally charged from this war, and people have their own opinions on why we did it in the first place. And I know a lot of Europeans are looking at Americans and thinking we're crazy. And I get it. I've heard all the critiques over the past couple of weeks, but if you can separate the political dogma from just the pure price action and why the price action is happening, then maybe it is maybe it is more green than not. A couple other clips I wanted to show from Hegseth. So, or let me show this Trump tweet first before that. Trump did tweet last night and said, we are going to be, quote, hanging around the Middle East, and we are not leaving anytime soon. Kind of a subliminal warning for this idea that, you know, the U.S. is not just going away until we get a meaningful deal. So he said, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Likewise, so has everyone else. That sentence, I think, is also very important. So he's not just saying Iran caved, they've had enough. He's also acknowledging everyone else has had enough. And he's not just talking about the US, he's talking about Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Qatar. Again, I just think a lot of actors are now going to really try hard for the, quote, Islamabad talks, which has been dubbed from the Pakistani prime minister, the types of talks that will be taking place over the next 2 weeks, to get this shit over with and to really get to it. It's not just the US and Iran here. There's a lot of actors that want this to end. And I think they will be at the table trying to find the best way to get a solution. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Iran can start the reconstruction process. We'll be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just, quote, hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well. I feel confident that it will, just like we are experiencing in the U.S. This could be the golden age of the Middle East. Which, again, look at the 10-year, 4.2%. It's been almost 3 weeks since we got this thing below 4.3. You're seeing the bond market also agree with the sentiment that, and the only reason the bond market, the yields are going down is because people are buying bonds because they think inflation expectations will go down. So yes, CPI is not going to be the prettiest and PCE is probably not going to do that tomorrow. But if the expectation is, well, the war is over, oil will go down, and this will eventually neutralize over the next coming months, Kevin Warsh has an even better chance of getting us a rate cut, and the bond market, should be pricing that in as well. So I think there's a better chance than not that maybe we see the markets starting to reflect some of this momentum. But also I'm cautiously optimistic because who knows, with Trump and with the nature of how this plays out, if this gets even more aggressive. Now, again, from a political perspective, I know a lot of people are asking, especially non-Americans and definitely non-MAGA, what was the point of this? What did we get? Iran had the Strait of Hormuz open before we entered into this. Like, we don't have any evidence that Trump really got them to get rid of the nukes. In fact, we haven't even reached a deal. So obviously they have not agreed to give back their nukes, yada, yada. Like, why did we do this? Those are very good questions. Those are not questions that I care about answering. Not because I don't personally care about it, but because it is not my job to politically analyze what we got or what we didn't get. It is simply my job to figure out how long will this continue, and if it does continue, what the impact is on the market. And so I think a lot of people today are really upset. Some people are happy. A lot of people are upset because they still don't know what the whole point of this. And I think the midterms will be more conclusive in terms of determining, why this happened. And the American people will have to decide if this was worth actually going through. But that doesn't have an impact on the market, and the market doesn't care. The market just wants oil to come down. And as now oil is coming down, there was some reporting last night that China was instrumental in getting Iran to come to the table. I don't know how valid that reporting is, and Trump will be meeting with Xi on May 15th, so in about a month. But as per the AP, Chinese officials encouraged Iran to look for a path towards a ceasefire in the war with the U.S. I mean, even the Chinese, if this reporting is true, are probably getting annoyed at this shit. Because if the U.S. economy is in trouble, if global prices on oil go up, like, it's not good for the Chinese. The Chinese export a lot of stuff. And if, in Indonesia, we're rationing oil, we're probably not going to be easily able to import all the small little things we pay for from China because we have more costs. And, that hurts China's business. And so as a result, I think globally they've recognized, look, we have our oil supply and our people are taken care of, but the rest of the world and developing parts of the world are in a bad situation because oil runs the world. And so we need to get a deal done as well for our strategic objectives to be received. And as a result, maybe that's why this deal is taking place. Apple will launch its foldable phone in September, according to Morgan Stanley. Apple as well, which was down 5% yesterday on potentially delaying their phone. It looks like that reporting was potentially false. Morgan Stanley saying it'll come in September. 259, that's up 2.4% on Apple, as that is also pretty green. Now, Lebanon was supposed to be included in the ceasefire as per reports yesterday. Right now, it's not necessarily confirmed that they're in the reports, and you have Israeli attacks that were reported in Lebanon this morning. Trump did say that Israel is included in the ceasefire, and theoretically that's supposed to include Lebanon as well. Israel does not agree with that. So, I mean, that is another risk. If Israel starts going rogue and there's a lot more attacks back and forth, that could hurt the sanctity, especially because Iran cares about Hezbollah and Lebanon. That would not be the best for this peace deal, but the broader focus of the deal seems to be in place, even if certain parts of it aren't. And, maybe Trump is going to have to end up making some real calls and making sure attacks don't take place if he wants to actually save this deal. If not, then obviously that is another risk, which is why, again, that cautiously optimistic approach here is not that crazy. Iran's armed forces announced plans to manage and control the Strait of Hormuz proactively and smartly. The first ship has passed through the Strait of Hormuz with Iran's permission. That came in just about 20 minutes ago. Iran's armed forces warn of stronger response against any renewed attacks. Iran's armed forces say we will support the resistant fronts in Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, and Iraq. Iran's armed forces say the U.S. would be treated as a party to any Israeli attack and face decisive response. So the Iranians write their warning. And this time their warnings are a bit more legit. I mean, this conflict proved that Iran has real control over oil and global prices of oil. And I think, honestly, that might be even more important than their pursuit of a nuclear weapon, because now they know that they can stop the entire world. So if they were to close the Strait of Hormuz down again and there's no deal, I wonder if that, sort of necessitates a legitimate military conflict. And I think Trump has been trying to avoid it, because if he wanted to do that, he had a month to do that. He could have gone into the Strait with the U.S. Navy and straight up had a military conflict. But I mean, think about what he said over the past couple weeks. Oh, NATO, if you want the oil, buy from us. The UK, if you want the oil, go and take it from the Strait. I mean, all of these dismissive statements because he probably didn't want a real serious conflict. And to me, this ceasefire is emblematic of that. And hopefully the 2 weeks turns into a lot longer than 2 weeks. And if that's the case, oil goes down and markets react. And hopefully markets react to the upside here. So that is what we got. It has been a long month of talking about geopolitics. Source with knowledge of the matter says Qatar Energy preparing for LNG production startup. I think we're going to see a lot more of those quotes with Qatar, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia getting ready to rebuild refineries and start exporting oil. That should be a strain on the price of oil. I know a lot of people still don't believe in this ceasefire, but a lot of people think it's a step in the right direction. So in the next 30 seconds, we are going to see the first bit of market action. Do people sell into this? Do people buy into this strength? Are people going to be navigating this with more hedging? We'll take a look at some of the options flow. But today will be the first day in about a month and a half where we finally have some level of closure to what has been taking place. It is cautiously optimistic in terms of that closure. Hopefully that closure turns into a full-on negotiation to a deal. And if it does, maybe we see some more momentum. Wednesday, April 8th, 9:30 a.m., the stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's see if we can hold on to this momentum. 677 on the S&P. It is holding on so far in the first 30 seconds to its pre-market gains. NVIDIA, that's up 4%. Robinhood, 11%. Meta, 4.5%. Carnival Cruise, 14%. Delta, which crushed earnings. We'll talk about their numbers in a second. That's up 11%. United Airlines, 13%. American Airlines, 11.94%. Tesla, that's up 4%. Micron, that's up 9%. Microsoft, up 3%. Amazon, up 5%. AMD, up 4%. Rocket Lab, $73. That's up 10% on the day. It is making a move. VIX is down 21%. Oil's at 92. SoFi up 10%. Nebius up 8%. The Qs up 3.3%. That is a hell of a move on the Qs right there. 607. Before the conflict started, the Qs were at around 620. We are at 607. That is not that far away from those highs right before the conflict. The question is, can we still hold on to that? Broadcom, which deserves it after that Anthropic deal, that's at 350. That's up 4.7%. SMCI is up 5%. Levi's, direct-to-consumer jean brand, they had a great earnings yesterday, beat on EPS by 10%. That is up 14% right here as we get into the market open. SMCI, which is going through a crazy investigation about smuggling chips into China, even that is up 5.6% as that is getting some more momentum. India and China began ordering immediate shipments of Iranian crude after the announcement of a 2-week ceasefire agreement between Iran and the U.S. So now you've got India and China going back to buying the same types of crude oil they were buying from the Iranians a month ago. And I think the Iranians obviously will be happy about that because they're going to be making money right here. And I don't think in the next 2 weeks they want to go back to not making money unless they really can't get to a deal. So if you believe that there is some framework for a deal in 2 weeks, this might be the signal that people have been waiting for. Zeta's up 7%. SPY, 675. 675. If we could crack 680, it would be nice. I do not think the SPY is dumping, for the person who just said the SPY is dumping. 678 to 675 is not a dump. We are up 2.8%. If we can at least hold 675 for the rest of the day. Now, a real dump in this, we get back to like 668. I think that's where the move starts to get faded, which is very possible. But as of now, it is trying to hold on to it. Robinhood still up 10%, NVIDIA up 3%, Google up 4%, Oscars up 11.6%, Meta up 4.9%, as that is still making its move. Iranian spokesperson for the National Security Committee says, in response to aggression against Lebanon, movement of ships in Hormuz must be stopped immediately. Okay, so you're getting a bunch of those headlines right there. We just talked about that Lebanese attack. That might be something markets react to if this ends up becoming a bigger issue, or the Iranians are not necessarily going to be as aggressive with this. I don't think we have enough data on that headline yet. We got to see if that comes through. Markets are not really reacting to that in a super negative way yet. But again, that is why I think some people are also like, well, we think this is real, but we need to actually get proof of this being actually sustainable. Google right there, 317, NVIDIA at 183.60 as well. ELF, where is ELF? ELF is up 7.7%. Even that one's making a move. The VIX keeps falling, even with some of these headlines around the ceasefire that aren't the most bullish. You're not seeing an uptick in the VIX, which means the VIX is not really believing this, especially when you have India and China starting to order more crude oil, and you're not seeing an uptick in oil. S&P right back to 676. Let's see if it can hold on to that. 678 was the high of day. Crude is at 93, a little bit above 92, but still at 93. Why is Netflix dumping? That's a Netflix issue more than anything. Reddit is going crazy. Look at that, 9% on Reddit. I mean, this is high beta of high beta. Like, that's a big ass move. And if the street is doubting the entire ceasefire, you should not be seeing that happening. Palantir as well, 2.6%, as that continues to go green. Okay, I think this is why the markets are not taking it that seriously. So this is from Iran. Following the continued violation of the temporary ceasefire by the Zionist regime's army against Lebanon and the Islamic resistance of this country, Iran is finalizing plans to carry out deterrent operations against the Israeli military in occupied territories. I think how the market's interpreting that is that they will keep the Strait of Hormuz open, but they will strike against the Israelis, which means they are not going to be closing the Strait of Hormuz because Israel attacked Lebanon. They will strike against Israel, which means if Israel attacks them even harder, then maybe then they close the Strait of Hormuz. But as of now, it looks like that's going to be their response, not necessarily closing the Strait. Grab's up 8% right there. Tesla's up 2.7. Micron is also up 9.3. I don't know why Netflix is down. I have no idea. I'll see if I can find an answer for it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was kind of the hedge during all the volatility, and now people are taking profits on it. Again, people got to buy this thing at like 72. So, but then again, retail really likes Netflix. It's been a big name for retail, so I don't know why they'd be selling it here. S&P 675.80, NVIDIA still moving as well. Netflix also got an upgrade yesterday to 120. So that one is a bit more confusing than now. MicroStrategy is up 8%. There you go, 131 on Mr. MicroStrategy. Robinhood from 77 to 75, still up 8.5% of the day. I don't think these names will hold on to all of the gains that they make during the day. I think they will give back at least some of it, but if they can hold on to like 70 to 80% of the move, that would feel bullish. So for the S&P, that's holding on to at least 670, if not 672, 673. That would be very nice to see, but do we gap up to 680? We got close. We're going to need a lot more momentum to see if we can get there. Volume on the SPY, by the way, which has been lagging the past couple of days. Volume on the SPY 6 minutes into the, 9 million shares. 2 days ago, it was like 3 million. So you got almost triple the volume right here on the SPY, which means you definitely have more market participants coming in. AEHR, they had a relatively strong earnings, 25%. Yeah, the market liked the earnings. I think they beat EPS by about 30%. Small cap name. Small cap, high beta rally. It's in the AI supply chain ecosystem, and we just announced a ceasefire. You put all those together, you're going to get a relatively big run, and that's what we're seeing right here. Meta's at 604, NVIDIA still at 180. Even Amazon, which, has been very stubborn in terms of its movement. 221, it hit 226 at one point, 3.5%. As that continues to go green. You guys saying hood is down? I have not opened hood yet. VIX below 20. Is hood down? I'm not seeing hood's not lagging on my side. I believe if it's lagging for people, because it does this these days where we have high volume, but it's not lagging for me. I don't see the lag, but I understand if people actually no. Am I? No, it is lagging. No, it is. Okay, it took a second. Well, that's actually bullish. You got a lot of people opening up the freaking app. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I have a brokerage account. I should check that today. Salesforce right there, 185.90. The fact that Salesforce is only up 1.55% shows you how much the software names are still getting hit with their narrative. So you would imagine Salesforce is down 40%. You would imagine it gets at least a 3-4% move. Nope. 1.6. Adobe, that's up a little bit better, 2.4. How about ServiceNow? ServiceNow is at 3.2. IGV as a sector is up 3. All right, so IGV is at least up a little bit more. IBKR is also lagging. This is so bullish retail. Retail might be coming back, folks. Retail might be trying to come back, at least on a day like this. SanDisk was almost 800 before the war, so it makes sense that it's getting back to these levels again. The reason for this also is SK Hynix and Samsung were up 15% today in South Korea. EWI is up 10% right here. We talked about the Samsung operating profit. It came in at 57 trillion won versus 38 trillion won expected. It was just a massive beat. This was 2 days ago, but the reaction was muted because of the war. And so a lot of these good, like the Robinhood Trump account announcement, like in a regular macro, that would be a 3-4% day for Robinhood. It was like a negative 2% day on Monday because like the war was going back and forth. So now that the war has theoretically come to somewhat of a conclusion, at least for 2 weeks, a lot of that stuff can be effectively priced in. It would not surprise me if we see some more upgrades coming on these stocks as well from the analyst community. Rocket Lab right there, 72. If people think the worst has happened. Nebius 130 is where they diluted or where it got hit for dilution 3 weeks ago. So maybe that is the next level that it needs to break above to have a chance of breaking that all-time high. Broadcom still up 5%. You're not seeing a lot of these stocks give back any of their momentum yet. I mean, some of them are, but a lot of them are still holding. Axon's making a move. Yes, XOM down $11. Chevron and Exxon are still up a lot. So Exxon year to date, even though it's down 7% right here, it's up 25% for the year, which is a phenomenal year for an oil and gas company. So although they are taking some haircuts, Chevron down 5% as well, they've still made a pretty nice move. So yeah, we talked about this. Tehran is considering strikes against Israel amid its violation of temporary ceasefire in Lebanon. Again, I don't know how the market's going to react to that so far. It doesn't look like the market's that upset about it. But it also means they're not closing the strait. I mean, if Iran said straight up, we're closing the strait because we feel that the ceasefire has been violated, that's a different question. If they're going to attack, it's not good, but it's not closing the strait. And again, the market can deal with war. The market cannot deal with the strait being closed. Now, if Israel starts attacking Iran more aggressively and then Iran closes the strait, yeah, that's a different issue. But if they're going to keep the strait open, I mean, they can keep fighting all they want. The markets, at the end of the day, don't care that much about the fighting. They care more about, can oil start passing through? S&P 675 as that one's continues to go. Also, I mean, look, if Israel keeps attacking, I think at some point Trump's going to make a call. And Trump's going to be like, dude, enough is enough. Like, we tried to fight for a month. We really couldn't get anything done. We have not achieved any major regime change, even though Trump's saying we're getting regime change. If the Ayatollah is still in power, obviously the regime is still there. Your attacks on Lebanon are just not what we need at the moment. Maybe Trump makes that call, and we will find out over the coming weeks. Pound right there, 152.57, as that continues to hold on to its green. Apple 256, ELF 66, Oscar 1473, Microsoft, that's up. Morgan Stanley, the banks are up heavily right here. XLF, that is up. Morgan Stanley, that's up 2.8%. Bank of America, that is also still green. Still 70-30 on the poll on do you believe in this green. If you believe in this green, that means you don't think the reaction to the ceasefire is wrong. If you don't believe in this green, that you think NVIDIA should not be 183. It should go back to 175 where it was yesterday. And as of now, at least price action is dictating that they believe more in this than not. HIMS right there, that's up 5%. Estee Lauder is up 4%. AMD, VG is down 13. Next is down 13. AMD is up 3. VG is down 14.5. Rocket Lab still up 17.8. VIX is still getting hit pretty hard right here. Down 21% on the day. Again, I will reiterate what I said in the morning. When we dropped in April of last year, we went from 6,000 to 4,800, 30% drop, which warranted, if the drop wasn't actually legitimate in any sense because the tariff stuff got reversed, a massive rally because we were down so much. We never ended up going down that much during this Iran stuff. The worst was an 8.6% drawdown, and that's from the highs. From when the war started, it was more like 6%. So the rally, conclusively should not be some crazy, crazy rally because we didn't go down that much either. Which means if you don't think we're going to have, Robinhood going back to 130 anytime soon as an example of a crazy V-shape, but we will get somewhat of a recovery, this is still, in my opinion, a decent environment to sell calls on and to be able to still profit from the liquidity. And Jason brought up a great stat yesterday, and I didn't even know this. The premiums on calls throughout the entire market, if you do an aggregated analysis, are almost double the premium people are paying for puts, which shouldn't make sense, right? Because, if people are bearish, they should be paying more for puts versus for calls, but it's flipped. People are, you could call it so degenerate, call it whatever adjective you want. People are so optimistic that there was going to be a taco and a V-shape that they were betting on calls. And at least for today, they were right. We'll see if that continues to last. But that means if you were selling those calls, you were getting some really good premium. And I think that probably continues unless we get a massive, massive face ripper, which is possible. But obviously then you see these Lebanon updates and that makes you realize, okay, a face ripper might not be as easy to get the way that we got it in the past. CPI is going to be on Friday. We'll get CPI on Friday. We'll get PCE on Thursday. And so we're not going to get any of that major inflation data today. IBKR, that one as well, 7.2%, as that's making a little bit stronger of a move right here. All the brokerage stocks and the bank stocks, SoFi as well, getting some momentum. Again, I don't think we're going to hold the extent of the gains we got today. Like, again, S&P, if we hold 675, I'll be very happy. That's a 2.5% day. But realistically, if we hold 670, I'd be happy. I don't want to see it go to like 660, 662. Then we're reversing way too much of the pump. But it is very normal to give back some of the gains. You can't, it's not natural to just hold everything. And you kind of don't want it to happen that way. You kind of want it to happen in a more consolidated way, every day getting a little bit more of a move, or every week getting more of a move. But in a response to the ceasefire, you definitely want to hold a decent chunk of the move for people to think that is a bit more real. Robinhood is up 8% right there. MicroStrategy also still up 5%. Oscar and Bloom Energy, look at that. Bloom, this one got hit pretty hard by the war, even though it was at 70 in October. I think it got to like the 125 range, back to 155. A lot of the high beta moves continuing to get their excitement. And then you had Oscar as well, which is up 14%. The 10-point plan is bearish in my opinion. So there was a couple of headlines yesterday saying that the United States has accepted the 10-point plan. That is false. The United States has not accepted any 10-point plan. The United States, and Trump himself tweeted that the 10-point plan is a workable basis to negotiate. So the U.S. has not agreed to give Iran everything they want. Obviously, Iran will frame it in that way because that's how they will propagate their information to their people. But I think there's a better chance that they come to an agreement on a couple of those points versus agree unilaterally on all 10 of those. And the Iranians will have to give something up. I don't know what they're going to be able to give up. I don't know what the United States is going to be able to get out of them, but something theoretically, if they give up, would give a better chance for this deal to be more legit. Netflix trying to go back to green. Salesforce ended up going red right here, which is kind of crazy. Is software going down? IGV. Yeah, software is going down. This is more of a software thing, though, than semis. SMH is still holding on to its move. Yeah, SMH has not really. Yeah, SMH is up 6%. It was up 6.3. It's up. No, it was up 5.95. It's up 5.58. That's not really anything. IGV was up 3. Now it's up 1.5. So IGV gave up 50% of the gains, which is annoying for software given how oversold it is. But this is just a sector the street does not like. Street does not like. Palantir going down. Are we red on Palantir? Palantir is okay. So, well, I think everyone should know why. Palantir's the number 2 holding in IGV. That's the most annoying thing about Palantir. Like, it shouldn't be like, can we take it out of the software index? Can we put it into any other index than freaking? It's not a traditional software company. It's just not. Same thing with Microsoft. I mean, part of the, I would say at least 5% of the 30% decline on Microsoft over the past year has been that it's in freaking IGV. Palantir is number 2, Microsoft's number 1. They need to re-update the index and take out 2 of the most important companies out of the software industrial complex, because Microsoft does a lot more than software, and Palantir, they do software, but they actually can grow, unlike the other companies, and just keep the rest of that junk in IGV. The passive flows in or out end up hurting that stock. Micron right there, up 8.5% as that continues to go green. It absolutely is a traditional software company. Again, yes, it's a SaaS company, but I mean, how many SaaS companies are growing 70% with 51% operating margins? And I'm saying, like, IGV is falling because the growth on the software companies has been horrendous. The perceived growth is going to be bad because they're not seen as AI names, and their margins suck. At least, in the, you know, I mean, Snowflake doesn't even have good margins because they're not. Snowflake's not even profitable. People forget Snowflake has not produced the GAAP profit yet. So when you talk about margins, it's like a lot of these software companies still are spending so much on sales more often than not because they have to sell their shitty product, and they don't really have the best business to invest in. Palantir is antithetical to all of that stuff. So yes, it's obviously software, but it should not be grouped in with the Adobes of the world. Like, but then it gets caught up in the algos that Adobe and Salesforce are stuck in as well. Air Test Systems making a massive move. Shopify, this one fell to 107, 125. Now, this is not even the high. Shopify got to 150 on their earnings, and then they fell back to 107. So this is still just like Meta has not got into the highs. Google's not gotten to the highs. A lot of these names have not really recaptured those levels yet. And I don't think they will that easily. I mean, Tesla was at freaking 405. It's at 356, which is a good move up from 338, but it's nowhere near the 400s yet. So you don't have massive levels of V-shape coming in, which once again proves that the covered call might not be the worst idea here. Trump tweeted this 2 hours ago. We didn't cover this, but a country supplying military weapons to Iran will be immediately tariffed on any and all goods sold to the United States of America by 50%, effective immediately. There will be no exclusions or exemptions. Okay, I did not cover that. That was tweeted 2 hours ago. But basically saying honestly, isn't Russia the main supplier? We already don't do any business with Russia anyway, because we have all these sanctions. AXT up 22%, but I guess Trump is saying if you supply any weapons to them, we're going to tariff you. If China does supply a ton of stuff to Iran, they are not getting tariffed by 50% because Trump can't afford to tariff China out of all countries by 50%. So I think this is more of a threat in words than in potential action, because the only 2 big ones are Russia and China, right? I mean, there's maybe a couple smaller ones, but the U.S. probably doesn't even do a ton of business with them anyway. But you got Trump with that tweet. There was another tweet I didn't cover as well. This was 2 hours ago. Let me read this. The United States will work closely with Iran, which we have determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. Okay, so Trump again claiming there's a regime change. There will be no enrichment of uranium, and the United States will work with Iran, dig up and remove all of the deeply buried B-2 bombers and nuclear dust. It is now and has been under very real satellite surveillance. Nothing has been touched from the date of attack. We are and will be talking tariff and sanction. Wow. Oh, this is also why the market's red. This was tweeted at 7 a.m. We are and will be talking tariff and sanctions relief with Iran. Oh my. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Oh, I missed that in the morning, guys. I did not see that. That's a bit, I mean, if he's saying, yeah, we are ready to give up sanctions relief, whether or not you politically think that's a good idea, that's the market saying, holy crap, they are really close to making the ceasefire last. If the United States is legit saying, all right, we will take, we've had sanctions on them for the past 15 years. We're not going to get rid of all of them, I would imagine, but Iran is missing out on hundreds of billions of dollars because of those sanctions per year. That's a big deal. If Trump is saying, quote, we are and will be talking tariff and sanctions relief with Iran, that means he's ready to give up some sanctions. And the thing he's going to probably want is this nuclear program to come to an end, which is what he talked about in the first part of this paragraph. I don't know if the Iranians will, agree to every part of getting rid of their enrichment program. But the point is, if they get to some type of a deal, we're going to get a deal in 2 weeks. Like if he's talking about sanctions relief, this feels way more likely than not. Bitcoin right there, 71.7. As that continues to go. That was correct. That was in the 10-point plan. That is correct. And that yesterday really not even yesterday, over the past week. Once we got that 15-point proposal from the New York Times 2 weeks ago, the number one thing I think most people thought Trump would agree to is sanctions relief. Because at this point, what else can you really do with it? You can't just be like, okay, we're going to leave after we bomb the crap out of you and cause billions of dollars of damage. It's like, you're going to have to give them something. And instead of paying like quote unquote reparations, you might end up creating a working relationship with them, which is through trade, which means you would have to get rid of some of the sanctions. Now, Trump is claiming they've had a regime change. I don't know if that's true. So if you're taking sanctions relief and giving it to a rogue regime, is that the best thing politically? I don't know, but it's definitely going to guarantee the Strait of Hormuz stays open. NVIDIA 183. And that's what the markets care about. Hey guys, Pouncer's going red on IGV. That's what it seems like. Maybe there's a different reason. Maybe people are taking profits here, but it seems like given all the other high beta names are up and Pouncer's going red, it seems like software is affecting that. Microsoft is also not red yet, but losing a decent chunk of its pump. Lindsey Graham tweeted that he is not the happiest about this negotiation and this ceasefire. I don't think Lindsey Graham is going to be happy until we legitimately get into World War III. But yeah, he just tweeted that he is not the happiest of this. The Fars news agency, Iran weighing response to Israel's ceasefire violations. Iran weighing response to Israel's ceasefire violations. Verizon is also down. Yeah, well, Verizon's a value name, right? So it should be coming down given it was up. So again, the Israeli-Lebanon attack that happened this morning, it looks like Iran also has already had Iran's foreign minister has had a telephone conversation with the Pakistani army chief, as per Tansim News, where they discussed the Israeli violation of the ceasefire in Lebanon. Okay, so, you're probably going to see potentially a little bit more escalation on that side, but I don't know if that means they're going to close the strait, which is pretty much what the market cares about. What is IGB? I meant to say IGV. IGV is the broader software. Look, maybe Pouncer's down for other reasons, and it's not just IGV, but you're seeing all the software names now starting to get hit as that thing is going down. It could also mean, it's not crazy for people to say that the defense contractors can go red, which is the perception of, the reason they went up is because the war was happening. They were seeming to get more demand. The reason they're going down, Cloudflare down, Intuit down, Salesforce red, Pouncer red, is because the war is coming to an end. Having said that, I think if Trump gets a stronger defense budget passed, and now we have entered into a world that is more unsafe than what people originally thought, I think demand for defense, demand for your Ondoses, your Kratoses, your Palantir, your Lockheeds, your Andurils, they're only going to be more intense. Imagine if China were to do something with Taiwan, or we were going to get another invasion from Russia into a NATO country. Like you would need a lot of military equipment from an autonomous drone perspective, also from a software side. And I think this entire conflict has just showed everybody that globalism, or the way that we perceived globalism to exist in this sort of kumbaya fashion of everyone just being friendly with each other, it doesn't exist anymore. And we're probably going to see a lot more volatility over the next decade geopolitically than just Iran and the United States. As a result, you might have some more demand for defense. Fear and greed is 29. We were at 4 or 8. I think we were at the lowest was 8. Lockheed is also down today. So that's actually another thing that could be affecting Pouncer, just all the defense names in general getting hit. Batty says big red candles coming in. If you sold calls this morning, you can close for a profit. That is true. If you sold calls, you can close for a profit literally in the past 20 minutes. Or if you were waiting to roll, you now have a better price to roll those calls at, because this is why also I don't think people should freak out. Like, if you have $75 calls on Hood and it was at 78 in the pre-markets, right now it's at 74. It's like, unless you think this is April 2025 2.0, when Hood went from 40 to 70 in basically 2 months, like, if you don't think that's going to happen as easily, because these stocks are not at those dirt cheap valuations. Palantir is not at 60. Nvidia's not moving up from $88 on the April lows. Nvidia's moving up from 175, which is a way different type of move. I still think Nvidia is undervalued, but is it 100% undervalued to the point where it goes to like 300 the way it would made a move from 80 to 190? No, like, that's just, there's way too much market cap to add there. And it's not at those dirt cheap levels, which means I think the covered call is still not going to be the worst defense right here. Tesla 353, that's getting a red candle. Micron also getting a red candle, but that's still green. Rocket Lab at $70, down from 72, still up 6.5% on the days. Intel moving. Intel is 57. Wow, goodness. Intel had the SpaceX news, obviously had the Jensen investment, the Trump investment. Earnings actually weren't that bad for Intel. We covered it last 2 months ago. I mean, they had a supply issue, not a demand issue. So they tanked because they weren't able to ship as many chips as possible, but it's not like they didn't have the demand to ship those chips. Thanks. This is good for me to pay taxes. Yes, this is also a decent liquidity event for people that need to sell to pay their taxes, which quite frankly came at the right time because taxes are due in 8 days or 10 days. Actually 7 days, in a week. 674 S&P, still 2.3%, a 2% move, still pretty massive. $15 right there. We got to see if that can still hold. S&P 585 puts just got 25 million of premium. All right, so you're definitely seeing some people potentially hedge right here. Wow, the New York Times said they have identified British cryptographer Adam Back as Satoshi Nakamoto. Is it a slow news day for the New York Times or something? Isn't there enough news out there? They're really going for a profile on who Satoshi is? Dude, this is a whole freaking 18-minute article. I'm not reading this shit, bro. This is a long article. Oh my goodness. My quest to solve Bitcoin's great mystery. Bitcoin's creator has hidden behind the pseudonym Satoshi for 17 years, but a trail of clues buried deep in crypto led to the 55-year-old computer scientist named Adam Back. Okay. The problem with finding out who Satoshi is it takes away the allure of Bitcoin. The whole point is that it should be anonymous. And I think Satoshi intrinsically knows that, which is why he would never come out and say that he's the creator. But Bitcoin at least getting a bid right here. SanDisk 788 as that continues to go green. CEG, that's up over 3%. Yes, this ceasefire violation is probably one of the headlines that the market's trying to grapple with right here. As Iran thinks of the response. Again, I think the response will be more missiles, not closing the strait. But if then Israel attacks Tehran, maybe they end up saying, all right, we're going to close the strait. And that's where I think the last thing Trump wants to see is the ceasefire violated because of Israel and have this deal fall through, especially after he just tweeted that we are already in talks with them on sanctions relief. So, I mean, if it really gets that intense, I think Trump's going to step in. I don't know if he's going to have enough power to get them to stop, but I guess we'll see in the coming days. Do we have any jobs data today? I don't think so. Trump to PBS, Hezbollah and Lebanon will get taken care of too. Okay, Trump right there giving a quote to PBS, talking about Hezbollah and Lebanon. Do we have any macro data today? Today's what, Wednesday? Mortgage applications, which we already got. The 30-year rate came in at 6.5. This came out an hour ago, 6.5 versus 6.57. We were at 5.98 before the war. Like, we were seriously making some progress on mortgages. We are now back up to 6.5, unfortunately. Well, that seems to be the big thing we got today. SoFi, is that falling back? SoFi, 17 to 1670. I mean, look, we're seeing a pump, but we're not seeing an explosive pump. And I think that's okay. Because first of all, it means the hedges that people have had on continue to be effective. And it also means you're not getting a jolt of momentum all at once, which is the easiest way for that momentum to die out, right? Like you get it quickly, it leaves quickly. But week by week progress to try to make more momentum is probably the best way to play this. However, those highs of the morning, not lasting. 182 on NVIDIA, down from 185. Google from 322 to 316. Netflix at least flipped green. Reddit from 154 to 148. So we do have some red candles coming in. Let's see if they end up going much lower than here, or if that's the extent of the damage. S&P, though, holding strong, 675. It's at least holding a little bit. Oh, we do have Fed minutes today at 2 p.m. We do have Fed minutes at 2 p.m. Palantir, I don't know. I actually don't know the reason for this. I could blame software, but I think this might be more than software. Honestly, my best conclusion here would be war coming to an end means perceived less demand for Palantir software from a government perspective, which, again, I don't think that's going to change their outlook for this year, but obviously this moved up because the war was happening, perceived more demand, and so the opposite's happening today, which is actually quite reasonable as you're seeing that 2% move right now. Fed minutes at 2 p.m. That's correct. I'll see if I can get the PBS clip. It's been a while since Trump called up PBS. For those that don't know, PBS is the public broadcasting service in the United States. It's the only state-funded media. Well, NPR is also state-funded. It's like the BBC in the UK, right? That's like purely state-funded, I think. But PBS doesn't have a lot of influence. I mean, like, no one really listens to the PBS. They used to have cartoons when I was little that I used to watch, but outside of that. SPY right there is 675, still holding on that one. App giving it all back. App. Yeah, App, okay. So App, I think that's more software than anything. These software names have been just so stuck in a bad territory, but App is a super high beta name. This one should be bouncing a lot higher. It's similar to Reddit as well. Oh, wow. Speaking of Palantir, Representative Gil Cisneros just filed a purchase for Palantir. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee. I'll get the exact amount and date of the purchase, but it seems like within the past 2 weeks, he bought Palantir. Gil Cisneros. Is this guy a Republican? Gil Cisneros. He is a Democrat from California. Okay. So we'll see what the exact purchase of that was. Dude, Arthur on PBS was the best thing ever. Arthur on PBS was the best thing ever. Tesla, she's giving more of it back. 352, 364 to 352. Markets, they are not going to easily let us get this green day. Although, again, these are more individual stocks. The S&P is holding this 675 level. I mean, maybe we go down to 673, but we bounced off 673 when we touched it about 15 minutes ago, and we've not really given it back. So it seems like more tech is being sold off here versus the macro sectors. Let me pull up the heat map here. Yeah, I mean, we're green across the board except in energy, but tech is not holding on to all the green that it had at 9:30. So there's your heat map. It's still a great day, right? You can't get too greedy. Google's up 3, Meta's up 4, NVIDIA's up 2, Broadcom's up 3. I think the question that a lot of market participants will be asking themselves right now is, do I feel this is time to at least deploy a little bit of capital? Do I feel like this is enough signal, or do I feel so unconfident in the extent of this rally that I'm going to keep waiting to see if there's more progress? And, time will tell. But I think you have multiple sides that feel this is the signal. They're not going to get the deal they got last Monday. And you have some sides saying, well, there's a shot we can get close to where we got last Monday, which is why we hold up. Bitcoin right there, 71.6. If we end up today red, that would, okay, so here's the thing. And someone asked a really interesting question yesterday, which is that let's say the market was flat. Let's say S&P was 650, but we got this ceasefire. Would you still buy? And I'll ask that question to everyone else right here. If you think that the ceasefire is bullish, let's say you at least have that assumption that the ceasefire is bullish and that there's not going to be a continued escalation of the war, especially with Trump talking about giving sanctions relief, all that stuff. But the markets didn't react to that, aka price action didn't go to the upside, which is kind of the natural thing that humans stick to get more confirmation bias. Would you buy? And I feel like we all want to say yes, because if you're getting a deal where nothing has changed in the price, but something substantial has changed in the actual geopolitics of the conflict, you'd want to buy. So if we were to go red today, unless the red is tied to the ceasefire not being real, which so far, my answer to the question yesterday was that price action has been dictated by the millisecond from these headlines. So it would kind of be impossible for the markets to be flat if you get the magnitude of the size of the announcement that we got yesterday, which means you have to buy into strength if you're going to be buying anything. That it would be hard to imagine buying the S&P if everything was flat if we had that announcement. But if you had the opportunity for that, I mean, yeah, as I'm looking at the chat, you would want to do that, right? Like if Robinhood was $60 and we have a massive ceasefire and you know that oil is coming down and retail is probably going to come back, I mean, that feels like a great deal. If Amazon is at 195 and there's a ceasefire and you know that, well, things are probably going to come back to normal, theoretically, now it probably wouldn't incentivize retail in aggregate because retail still moves with price action, and quite frankly, not just retail institutions, right? Humans in general do that. So to answer your question, if we end up red on the day, but nothing has changed in terms of the context of the ceasefire, I think all of us will be wondering why, because we all want a reason, because this market is so driven by price action. But if there is no reason, I feel like that'd just be a great opportunity if you think the ceasefire is going to result in a prolonged end to this conflict. Iran Navy message says ship owners need to receive permission from Iran to transit or they will be targeted and destroyed. Several vessels in the Gulf received messages claiming to be from Iran Navy saying Hormuz is still closed. Okay, those two headlines could be affecting markets right now as well. So you've got Iran basically saying you need complete permission from us to re-enter the strait, which those actually affect the market way more than anything else because, that affects oil prices. And several vessels are receiving messages claiming that the Hormuz Strait is still closed. Oil's not reacting, though. Oil's still at 92. Still 17% drop on the day. So none of those headlines are really affecting the VIX or oil. And they might be more isolated headlines than not. S&P still holding on as well. But those headlines mixed with the Israel-Lebanon headlines, obviously, not the best to see. This shit is just never going to end. I don't know, man. I have more faith than not that we get to some agreement in 2 weeks, but maybe I'm too optimistic. Maybe it's going to last for the rest of the year. I don't think so, dude. I don't think this goes until 2027. I don't think this is a back and forth. I think Trump's going to have to give. I don't know how much leverage Trump has in these negotiations because Iran just proved how much they can hold up the global oil supply. But I think he's going to do what he needs to do to get a deal. I mean, remember sentiment was 2 weeks ago when extreme fear was 4. People were saying this thing is going to last until 2027. I was in the mindset pretty vehemently that this shit is not last, and maybe it lasts till the end of May, the end of June. I do not think this is going into next year. If that's the case, I think the midterms are over, and there's obviously going to be higher oil prices. Trump's not going to be able to claim the economy is the best. So just from that perspective alone, that's my logic for why this doesn't go till 2027. And that sentiment matched extreme fear being at 4. I mean, like, people thought this was going to last forever. I'm not saying this is going to end tomorrow, but it at least feels we are closer to a potential end of it. We got to find out. This won't even last 24 hours. I mean, if we keep seeing these ceasefire violation headlines, then yeah, we might. We might. Here's a question. If there was no X or Truth Social, how different would the markets be? That's a great question. You know, Steve talks about this all the time. The access to information that retail has really dictates. I mean, people sell stuff and buy stuff on a simple headline they see from the Wall Street Journal, right? So, and those notifications are more aggressive. I'm sure people have notifications of my tweets, and I tweet a headline, and sometimes people make a decision immediately when they see that. I mean, everything is so headline driven. So yeah, I think there would be honestly a lot less money in the markets because people wouldn't be that excited to invest because keeping up with the media of the markets is part of why people invest. But also there'd probably be less volatility if we didn't have a Truth Social post dictating where we would go. Meta below 600, 597, still up 4% of the day. Can't be too upset about it. Adam Back, that crypto New York Times guy, said, I'm not Satoshi, but I was early and laser focused on the positive societal implications of cryptography, online privacy, and electronic cash. Hence my 1992 onwards active interest in applied research on eCash, privacy tech on cyberpunks, which led to hash cash and other ideas. That's exactly what Satoshi would say. So Adam Back denying denying that he's Satoshi. NVIDIA, red candle. Let's see if we can get some more coverage on this. Crude is still not budging. I mean, I know we're seeing some of these stocks decline, which is people taking profits, but you're not seeing it because crude is going up. I mean, the story the past couple of weeks has been crude up, VIX up, stocks down. Today you're seeing crude down, VIX down, stocks giving up some of their highs, which is a better story in my opinion, if that means that we're actually going to see any sustainment to the ceasefire. Here's a little more coverage on this, and then we'll keep going from there.
And implemented so far as part of this 2-week ceasefire. There are questions around whether it will hold and what the path forward will look like from here. So far this morning, Sarah, you just mentioned Vice President J.D. Vance called the agreement a fragile truce. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is emphasizing that the military remains ready to resume combat operations if needed. The state of the Strait of Hormuz is somewhat unclear at this point. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says commerce will be flowing through the strait, but Iran says that reopening will be limited and that passage will require coordination with its military. Iran also says that in-person negotiations will begin in Islamabad on Friday, but the White House says nothing is official until it has been announced from here. And despite the ceasefire, there's also reports of attacks across the region overnight, including in Iran, the UAE, and Kuwait. Iranian state media, Fars News, now is reporting that Iran believes Israel violated the ceasefire and says it's preparing a deterrent operation against the Israeli military. So a lot could happen in the next few hours that will determine the next steps from here. And then in the meantime, President Trump is also saying this morning that any country supplying military weapons to Iran will see a new 50% tariff on its exports to the U.S. I've asked the White House for details on what authority the president will use to do this, but it seems to be a direct shot at China, could lead potentially to steep new tariffs on Chinese imports, guys, just over a month out from that bilateral summit in Beijing.
Megan, is the White House saying anything about this 10-point peace plan that Iranian state media released, which I don't know how trustworthy it is, but I don't see anything that it seems like the U.S. would agree to on that?
Absolutely. That's the key question right here is what's going to happen with that 10-point plan. President Trump, in his initial post last night, said that that was a workable basis on which to start negotiations, pointing directly to the 10-point plan that the Iranians put out. What the Iranians say is in that plan, though, as you say, there's not much that it looks like the U.S. would agree to. It involves lifting all sanctions against Iran, removing all U.S. military from the region, allowing Iran to maintain control over that strait and keep some military escorts required, possibly opening the door to charging tolls and that sort of thing. All of those on their own, that's just 3 of the points, don't seem to be something that the U.S. would agree to. But what we're hearing from the president, sometimes he calls it a 10-point plan. Other times he says it's the 15-point U.S. plan that they're working off of. He says a number of the points have already been agreed to. We just don't have specifics on what they are just yet.
Yeah. The phrase acceptance of enrichment in the Farsi language version is raising some eyebrows, not in the English version, Megan. We'll talk all morning long as we get closer to the presser. Yeah.
And another point is ending IAEA resolutions and nuclear oversight measures on that enrichment.
Right.
Yeah.
Megan Casella in D.C. For more on this post-ceasefire.
Well, my mom sold the top. She just texted me a screenshot. She sold 500 shares of Rocket Lab at 72. If that is the top. Rocket Lab right here now at 70. I bought her 500 shares yesterday at 350, 10 minutes before the close at 66.50. And she just texted me, well, I took some profits. So smart lady. Smart lady. I thought she would sell some calls on it. She was like, nope, I'm out. I'm taking my profits. I am taking the money and running. Yeah, 67.10 was my average. 72.19 she's out. So let me know in the chat. Did anyone copy my mom and take some profits here? She's absolutely a trader, bro. She saw up 2,000. She was like, screw this. I'm out. Retail, baby. Retail. I have not sold my Rocket Lab. I'm keeping it. Well, let's play it for SpaceX. Also, the call premiums are pretty juicy on Rocket Lab. But in general, I mean, look, these candles are not fully holding across a lot of these growth stocks. Palantir being the most obvious. Again, the S&P not seeing that pain, guys. S&P's at 675. It hasn't lost anything. I mean, it was at 676.50. 675 is nothing. Palantir, on the other hand, down 2%. That's not holding on. Tesla barely holding on. SoFi, 1750 to 1650, not really the best. Robinhood was at 77. It's at 73, still pretty good, but you know, a lot of these names are still taking a beating from that top in the morning, if that was the quote unquote top. Everything tech going down, correct. What's her YouTube? I should be watching her. Yeah, you should. You should. Reports in Iran, and an informed source said Iran is considering the possibility of withdrawing from the ceasefire agreement if the Zionist regime continues to violate its attacks in Lebanon. Look, if these Israeli-Lebanon attacks are legit going to make Iran feel like they need to get the hell out of the ceasefire agreement, then I think Trump, who's already tweeting as if they have a negotiation and a peace deal, is going to look really stupid. And this idea that Trump is like, yeah, we're ready to give up sanction relief, which he literally tweeted at 7:30 this morning. If Iran's like, we don't even care about your sanction relief, we want out of the ceasefire, I think Trump's going to be really, really pissed off at Israel. And I wonder if he has any power to be able to make sure they, don't keep attacking so that they can at least have a chance to get a deal. But I would imagine, if the markets tank and oil spikes up because Iran gets out of the ceasefire because of attacks on Lebanon from Israel, it's going to be a messy situation, but I also think Trump is going to be pissed. SanDisk up 9%. And this circus will continue if that's how it plays out. Intel is holding up. Bought the TQQ dip and sold it open. Not bad. TQQQ. This thing has had a massive run, or at least has had a massive downside move. 9% up on the day. It's probably up 12% at the very open. What about VG? VG. It's a green candle, 1305 to 1393. The VIX was below 20. The VIX right now, 20.9. All right, so still down 19% of the day. But you're not seeing it fall below 20. Technically, Israel's not getting anything from this deal, right? What did they want before starting the war? Yeah, I mean, Israel, theoretically, this deal is not giving them anything substantial. Obviously, before the war started, they wanted to go into war, and Israeli Channel 12 reported yesterday, the biggest media outlet in Israel, that Israel is not happy at all with the ceasefire, but they are complying, allegedly. Then you have the reports from Lebanon this morning, they're not complying. But yeah, that is an argument that, and that is what a lot of people said early on in the war, which is that, when Marco Rubio admitted that we attacked because we knew Israel was going to attack and we didn't want them to go alone, this was back in early March. A lot of the feedback was, well, let them fight the war, right? Why are we fighting it for them? Like if they're getting into this war in the context of something that, they might not be prepared to handle, and they might need to learn that they're not prepared to handle, then why are we protecting them? Nonetheless, the U.S. came out and said, well, the nuclear weapon stuff was a big deal, and that's why we joined. But I wonder if Trump's just like, screw it, bro. If you guys really want to fight, then you fight. Well, we're not helping you this time. Because, there may be a world where Trump is pissed. I mean, he's got midterms coming up, and if these attacks don't help him get oil down, then he's not going to be the happiest. NVIDIA getting a little bit more of a green candle, back up to 182. Small spike up there as well. Delta earnings. We didn't talk about that. Let's look at that real quick. Then we'll talk about Grab as well. Delta, let me pull up those numbers. Actually, some really good results from Delta, even in the midst of the increase on oil. So Delta beat by 12% on EPS, 64 cents versus 57 cents expected, 14.2 billion versus 14.05 expected. So you got a beat on the top and the bottom on EPS and revenue. Their guide was a bit lower. Street expected 170. They came in at 150 of EPS. So not the best guide, but nonetheless, I think the markets are ignoring that because they also understand it's not the easiest for Delta to navigate the oil issue. So they're giving them a bit of a benefit of the doubt. And then CEO says demand remains strong and we are taking actions to protect our margins and cash flow. In the June quarter, we expect to lead the industry with $1 billion of net income. They have $8.1 billion in cash. They are one of the most profitable airlines, which is why I think you're getting a lot more momentum. Two Pakistani sources, U.S. delegation led by J.D. Vance and Iranian delegation led by Qualbath and Arakaichi to arrive in Pakistan's Islamabad on Thursday. Okay, so you got Vance, who supposedly is the guy who's going to be doing the negotiations, which a lot of people speculated on yesterday. Not Kushner, not Witkoff, not Rubio, but it seems like it's Vance. Pakistani PM violations of a ceasefire have been reported at a few places across the conflict zone, which undermine the spirit of the peace process. I earnestly and sincerely urge all parties to exercise restraint and respect the ceasefire for 2 weeks as agreed upon so that diplomacy can take a lead role towards a peaceful settlement of the conflict. I think did the Pakistani PM just tweet that? Because if he did, then you have confirmation that there definitely was a violation of the ceasefire. And he's probably not the happiest about it either. Yeah. Just posted right now. There it is. Okay, so I mean, that could be your reason for why oil spikes if it does end up spiking. There it is. Pakistani PM. Violations of the ceasefire have been reported. I wonder if Trump publicly kind of makes an address of this violation of the ceasefire to kind of put more pressure here. We'll see. Don't have any tweets from him yet, but has not completely destroyed the extent of the market gains here today. Yeah, USO also up today. This is the short oil fund. Retail did buy a lot of this fund, USO. Retail bought almost $1 billion of it. Well, sorry, this is down today, so it's in the opposite direction. But obviously, the price of oil definitely impacting that. Rocket Lab still up 5.8. S&P 674.30. Small red candle. Not anything super ugly right here. Iran's press TV site source is saying that Iran will punish Israel for attacks against Hezbollah in the violation of ceasefire. All right, I mean, look, this is where people have to make a decision. If you don't believe the ceasefire lasts, you sell more aggressive calls, you sell some stocks like my mom did, and you wait. You wait for a better entry. If you think this is just, to use Trump's words, side excursions that are taking place and the extent of the deal will stay in place, then maybe we give back some of the gains, but we might not be going back to the levels we were at last week. And I guess in the next coming days, I mean, April 10th, the negotiations start. So you would hope by April 10th to April 25th, there's nothing that dramatic. NVIDIA back to 182 as that's holding on. Meta still at 597. Trump says peace talks to start soon in Pakistan, as per the New York Post. We'll get money market fund data in a couple of days as well, so we'll see how much money actually came out to start, potentially getting allocated if people are excited. Can you link your options course? Yes, I'm linking it right here. It is free. It's just a 3-hour YouTube video. Hopefully it's the easiest way to learn a little bit more about options. But that is the video right there. Yeah, we need to be peace maxing, okay? We need to be peace maxing. All right, we're an hour into the markets. Put in the chat, what have you done so far today? If you've done anything. I think when I asked this an hour ago, most people said they were selling calls or taking some profits, which I think is very fair. And so far, that was the right move. At least on the data. I mean, obviously, most of us are long-term investors here. But for the people that navigate a portfolio on the day-to-day and have it separate from their longs, like I think that's like most retail investors. Like me, I have my long stuff that I don't touch. And then I have the stuff that I'm doing for a trade, or I'm positioning here, or I'm trying to navigate it on a weekly basis. And those require a little bit more minute-by-minute action. Amazon 221, that one's trying to get back up to go green. Nina says I shorted SanDisk. That one's still up on the day, but if you got it closer to 798, then that's working. 785 right there. I bought SoFi and NVIDIA 5 minutes ago. I'm about to sell AMD. Where is AMD? Are we at 230? We are basically at 230, 229. I mean, look, I don't think AMD deserved to go from 267 to 195 last month. And so the fact that it's right in the middle at 230 feels a bit more reasonable. But those Anthropic numbers are just, my goodness. Like NVIDIA and Broadcom are major winners from Anthropic, but AMD as a function of just being part of that entire ecosystem for compute. I mean, I believe Lisa when she says they're going to grow 35% every year. I don't see how that doesn't happen when you see this type of growth. Sold covered calls at the market open. Sold covered calls. Jen says, I rolled my covered calls. Laura says, I'm hodling. Sold my AER at 15. Congrats, man. That's 15 to 62. That's a 400% gain on that? A little more. Not bad at all. Sold Micron, got 8%. Sold puts on Palantir, rolled more calls. Sold Robinhood to add to Micron. Bought Next. All right, so it seems more people than not hedged and or took profits. Tesla's about to go red. That's crazy. Tesla's got its own issues, though. I mean, like, this is not high beta drawdown because Rocket Lab's still up 6%. So if Rocket Lab and Tesla are classified as just high beta, same thing with Reddit, which is still up 5%, then Tesla should be up. This is a Tesla issue for why this thing cannot hold on to its gains. And it might just be because it's expensive. Then again, that's a weird reason because it's always been expensive. But it is weird. You would think Tesla kind of should get a chunk of the rally when high beta goes up, and it's getting nothing today. Which is, I don't know. I'm not sure why, but you're seeing people sell off Tesla. Intuit's still down 2%. Will software come alive again? I don't know, man. When you look at, so just to give some context, Salesforce will do $42 billion of revenue this year. Anthropic's doing $30 billion. Salesforce took 25 years to get to $42 billion of annual revenue. Anthropic took 15 months. It's not an apples to apple comparison, but when you think of why Anthropic causes a sell-off in the software market, it's because the private markets are seeing the growth. The public markets are then trying to put a valuation on the growth. And if ultimately what Anthropic is doing is selling a tool to make you more productive, that's what these SaaS businesses are. They're tools to make the enterprise more productive. And if Anthropic's just gobbling up market share, even if it's not literally taking on the CRM, even though there's plenty of rumors that Anthropic has hired ex-Salesforce people to build their own internal CRM agentically and sell it, then, I mean, like, it's just like more, you should be buying the semis because Anthropic's going to need a lot of compute over the software names, because NVIDIA or Salesforce is never growing 30% year over year again, top line revenue. Like, that's just not happening. Their guides for 10%, maybe they'll get 12%, but there's more growth opportunities. And Salesforce still has a multiple. It doesn't have as aggressive as a multiple, but it still has a multiple. Broadcom right here, still up 4% as well. Oil, are we going up on oil? That would explain a little bit more of the red. Yep, there you go, 92 to 95. All right. So it would be nice for crude to not go to 100. If it does, that's when you can start thinking, all right, this rally really is losing steam. We will see if that happens today, but 92 to 95 is the move that has been made so far. Brent is also pumping right now as well. Air Test Systems, dude, this one, crazy move, 26%. Again, great earnings, but also a small cap. Don't you think software is going down from the Claude Mythos preview showing zero-day exploits in nearly all existing software? Yes, I think that's part of it. Now, that actually boosted demand for CrowdStrike and Palo Alto yesterday, which is why CrowdStrike and Palo Alto were up 5% yesterday, up another 3% today. But 100%, I think that Claude model. Now, on a high beta day like this, I would think that the algos would just kind of ignore it and still give Salesforce and Adobe and ServiceNow a little bit of a bump. But really, software just seems like, if you have to ask what sector sucks right now, it's not fintech, it's not space, it's not nuclear, it's not quantum. It's the potential perceived growth rates of these software companies that have been given 50x multiples over the past decade, which includes Microsoft, unfortunately, even though Microsoft shouldn't be classified like that. And yeah, IGV is just not that attractive when you see those Anthropic numbers. Like, what's more attractive than IGV is freaking NVIDIA or anything in the semiconductor world. Amkor is more attractive because Amkor is going to get a lot of demand from Broadcom, and Broadcom is getting a lot of demand from Anthropic. And so, boom, is there a world where Amkor outperforms a lot of their software names over the next 2 years? Yeah, I think so. I don't think that's crazy to say, especially when Amkor trades at 2 times sales, and these software companies still trade at 30 times earnings. Bloom right there up 12%. That is also still green on the day. Oil, crude at 95.50. 95.50 right now. Okay, Grab, quick update on that. That stock also went up and then came right back down, lost a lot of its momentum, but it is still up 3.67% of the day. They had their Grab X event last night, and they unveiled a lot of new products. It's on YouTube, so you can watch it on their YouTube channel. I will link this thread in the chat. This is a good thread by someone who covers Grab. They introduced 12 new products. A lot of this is rooted in AI. A lot of this is more personalized stuff for people that use the product. The number one product that I think matters the most is cash loans. So essentially, Grab's loan portfolio is $1.2 billion. By the end of 2026, they expect it to be $2 billion, and management, conservatively is expecting $2 billion. It could get closer to $2.5 to $3 billion. Cash loans are basically now offering more loans to consumers. Previously, Grab only gave loans to drivers and merchants. So you have loans that are not just going to drivers and merchants anymore. You have loans that are now going to consumers. They have 50 million monthly transacting users, which is growing 17% year over year. I think in the next coming years, they're going to have closer to 150 million MTUs. They have 700 million people in Southeast Asia. So, 1 in 7 people in the country use Grab. And as a result of that, for the stock to be, down 50% from the highs feels intrinsically undervalued. Cash loans is the most important thing because their margins on deliveries and mobility are not the best. Their margins on fintech, although they're not adjusted EBITDA profitable yet, they're going to be break even by the end of this year. In general, fintech margins are way better than mobility and driving margins and deliveries margins. So I think that's actually a really big catalyst. The question is going to be how well they can underwrite the loans that they give out. Obviously, the rising fuel costs in Grab are not the best, but also, from my understanding, they've passed on a lot of that cost to the consumer. And, if it's another 20, 30 cent bump on your ride, the consumer is not that stretched in those countries where they're not going to be able to afford it. So I don't know if that's going to be the biggest headwind going into the earnings. But the products they released last night definitely feel a bit more productive than not, especially in the context of the fintech business. So stock was up 7 or 9%. Now it's up 3, very similar to a lot of these names that pumped pretty heavy and now we're giving back their gains. The most important thing is we have not fully gone red on the index, still up 2% on SPY. And, you know, if we go only up 1%, which would be losing about $7 from here, then I think the extent of this move has been muted. If we kind of stay at these levels, then it's a good day. 2%, you can't complain at least too much about it. NVIDIA almost below 181. Well, once again, the NVIDIA covered calls. I have 182.50 strikes for this week. In the morning, I'm underwater. An hour later, we're back to business. So it's like, and me and Jason talked about this yesterday as well. He still thinks this is the year of the covered call. Like he still thinks, assume the war goes away, the volatility of Kevin Warsh, of inflation, of the labor market, of earnings growth. I mean, pick your poison on all the different things we still have to deal with. We had a ton of shit to deal with before the war. The war just made it even more complicated. That stuff still exists. And again, I will reiterate, we are not down the way we were down in April of last year. So the idea that we have this, like, you know, people are expecting this explosive V-shape, it's just not possible. We didn't go down that much. So for the market to have that many more trillions of market cap when it didn't even take away that many trillions of market cap, it logically doesn't make sense. Whereas last year it made a lot more sense because, you know, we gave up 2 years of gains in 10 days. Like it felt stupid, it was stupid, and then the market reacted by essentially V-shaping and admitting that it was stupid. This time is not as stupid as it was before, especially because there was a legitimate reason, aka oil spiked up 90% for why we went. And the fact that we only went down 8% on the S&P and oil spiked up 90% is, again, a bit encouraging. But that also doesn't mean the S&P has to go up 10% just because oil goes down 18%. Which means we probably stay choppy, but at least we are not revisiting the lows of 2 weeks ago. But that choppy behavior probably still means buying is not horrible unless you're waiting for an absolute low, which might not easily happen again, and selling calls is not horrible either. And I think that's why we're giving up some of those gains. Nebius, is that still moving up? Nebius was at 130 or 125. Nebius 122. Again, 122. Can you be that upset? Like, it was at 125. Now it's at 122. Like, that's just not. Now, Nebius gets back to 110. I understand. But if you're long Nebius, you know, you probably aren't too upset about this. We've had massive growth in earnings in a lot of names over the last year. Yeah, that's true. And a lot of those names are up, right? Robinhood was 30, now it's 70. Palantir was 60 in February of last year, now it's 140. Like, that's the other thing. The earnings growth that we've had in all these names is reflected in the market cap. NVIDIA is still a freaking, you know, $4.4 trillion company. Do I think it should be closer to $5 trillion? Yeah, based on the earnings growth. But it's not like NVIDIA's, you know, a $2.3 trillion company and DeepSeek is the reason it's down 40%. Like, we are not in that environment for stocks. I don't think that means NVIDIA should go to 150, but I also don't think NVIDIA should jump up to 220 tomorrow, even though I think intrinsically it's probably worth that. Naturally, over time, it should get there. The problem with the war is, like, people didn't see a pathway for these stocks to even have a chance to get to their perceived neutral valuations, like Meta, which I think most people think 680, 690 is fair value. It's like, you don't even have a chance to get there if oil is creating this cascading effect. Now it feels like, okay, if this war is over, maybe there's a better shot to get there. But, you know, that better shot can still be hedged in the short term. 673 S&P, as that continues to get a few red candles. Hexeth demands Iran turn over uranium stockpiles. Trump could still order a raid to seize 970 pounds of enriched uranium buried in Iran if they do not agree. That's per the New York Times. That's per the New York Times. That also might be causing a headline to have oil spike from 92 to 95.50. Now, again, Trump has not said anything about that, so we still have to see. Also, you know, we got to be a little bit smart about the media as well. I don't think they came up with this ceasefire agreement in 2 hours. I think this was agreed to a couple of days ago, and they announced it yesterday. So, when you see the New York Times saying Hegseth demands Iran turn over uranium stockpiles, do we not think that the United States has already told Iran, hey, if you guys want sanctions relief, this is one of the things you have to do? And so I would imagine when we get these reports, some of these reports might just be leaked negotiations that they're trying to get out there into the public for the media to report on in order to, have both sides have a little bit more pressure to get a deal done. Let's get a little bit more of an update on oil, then we'll keep going.
Money is cheap, but it has been one of those situations where for this bull market, that's been around the bottom of the range. For context, in the bottom in April 2025 in the tariff panic, you got down to 18 or thereabouts. We did not get as washed out by any measure this pullback relative to the way we did in April of 2025. So presumably that means we don't have the kind of open-ended upside in a recovery scenario that we did back then. Also, keep in mind, we were talking rate cuts before this all started. We got those off the table. Oil's not going to necessarily retrace the whole move higher. So I do think you're going to have some friction. And so the market, again, is going to have to reconcile all those things. But Wall Street likes nothing better than pain before gain narratives. In other words, the numbers are going to be messy. We're going to have to get through this period. But that de-risks the economic and earnings data, in my view, in the near term, because everybody could say, don't worry about that. That's conflict related, and that's something that we're going to get through over the next several months.
When you're talking about rationalizing AI, Mike, explain to me what you mean. I mean, it's not like we're going to stop debating whether software companies are going to get slaughtered by AI or the value of NVIDIA, what the value of NVIDIA should be.
You're not going to stop talking about it, David. My point is that those stocks didn't kind of hold up in the downturn. So in other words, they've also had their the hurdle rates go down, arguably. Now, one difference is memory's ripping today. That's been the one area. That's kind of like people keep retreating to smaller patches of high ground, and that's where it is right now. So I don't think that you've decided that the Mag 7 is going to be coming back and is going to lead this market higher. In fact, that's a big open question right now because that predated the conflict.
He's right about that. Mag 7 was down before this conflict even started. I think I have the direct quotes from Trump to PBS. Okay, here we go. So this news reporter, I asked about Lebanon still being hit and if he'd seen that. Wow, Trump says, yeah, they were not included in the deal. Huh. I asked why not and if they should have been. Trump says because of Hezbollah, they were not included in the deal. That'll get taken care of too. It's all right. I asked, and you're okay with the Israelis continuing to hit them? Trump says it's part of the deal. Everyone knows that. That's a separate skirmish. You got to talk faster. I tried to ask if he regretted that the Truth Social post about wiping out assimilation noted that there was a huge pushback to that statement from Democrats. Then he hung up. That's a separate skirmish. Okay. Okay, so this is Trump saying that he's acknowledging the attack on Hezbollah and he is okay with it. Okay, that might get a little dicey because if Trump is saying, yeah, that's fine, that's not part of the ceasefire, and Iran is saying, no, that has to be part of the ceasefire. I mean, look, it's very simple. If Iran wants to close the strait again, they'll close the freaking strait. Now, granted, they also have an incentive to keep it open monetarily. But that is their biggest sort of weapon here when it comes to negotiating is messing up oil prices. This is incredible. Wow. So Trump today is saying two things. He said, we are discussing sanctions relief with Iran, which is huge in terms of negotiations. And then he's saying Lebanon's not even part of the deal. So if they're getting hit and the Iranians are mad about that, it's a separate skirmish and we can't get too upset about it. Well, I guess, I mean, I get why Trump doesn't want Lebanon to be included in this, obviously. But if the Iranians do, that's where it comes down to which one actually ends up getting the side that they want. Oil is still slightly up from the low levels at 92 to 95. S&P, we might break 673 right here. And if we do, 670 is in play. And we got to see. Oh, we just lost it. 672.91. Oil should be spiking a little higher if that's the case. We are at 95.80, not 96 yet, but 95.80. Okay, let's get on this roller coaster again. Why not? Once again, covered call. That's it. That's the saving grace here. I mean, either you day trade out of these positions and you time it, or that call protects you. This is not the crazy V shape that maybe the futures were signaling. It's still a pretty good recovery. 2% of the S&P is nothing to doubt, but it's not, 3-4% intraday move like we saw last April when this happened. Trading might be the best option here. See, but the thing about retail is, the goal is to be long and just navigate the volatility, but my goodness, we continue to see more volatility. Israeli forces fired warning shots of a convoy and Italian U.S. peacekeepers in Lebanon on Wednesday, damaging a vehicle but causing no injuries, the Italian government said. Yeah, Mama Amit called the top. She literally didn't even sell last night when it got to 70. Bought at 67. She could have sold at 70. She literally got it right at 72. And if you sold calls on Rocket Lab at 72, I mean, the premiums were probably freaking good. These call premiums have to be juiced up on a day like this. S&P back above 673. Let's do another poll right here. Let's ask this question. Where do we think the S&P ends today? Where does SPY end today? So let's do 673, 670, 668, or 675. So 668 is more bearish, 670 is more neutral, 673 is flat, and then 675 is back to where we were basically in the morning. I had to guess, maybe a little bit more downside action, 670, which I still think I would be happy about if we get there. I need 640. Dude, if we go to 640, we were at 640 last week. We were there. If we get back there, so be it. Pound right there, 148.11. That's now 1.3% app. Lovin 412. SoFi 1652. Israel forces fired warning shots. We talked about this at Italian UN peacekeepers. Kuwait said it was subject to 4 Iranian missiles and 42 drones. Qatar Defense Ministry says it was targeted on Wednesday by 7 missiles and drones launched from Iran. Now, if these drones are being launched in response to the Israeli attack on Hezbollah, then, I mean, that's Iran basically saying we aren't going to keep our side of the deal if you guys aren't going to keep your side of the deal. And then you have Trump this morning saying that there is no side of the deal. I don't know. I mean, continues to get messy. Here's Al Jazeera this morning on some of their coverage of this ceasefire.
Well, for now, yes, this seems to be the date, Friday. However, there are a lot of issues that seem to be shaking this framework, at least expectations. Yesterday, things were based on, according to President Trump, were based on the 10 points proposal that Iran presented and that make good basis for negotiations. And Abbas Araghchi, Iran's foreign minister, saying that his country will consider the 15-point proposal by the U.S. However, what we heard today from the American War Secretary about the zero enrichment that is actually refused and has been refused on several occasions. And actually, this war happened because the Iranians did not accept to give up on enrichment. Also, the highly enriched uranium that is buried under one of the facilities in Isfahan. Beside that, there are other issues. And now with the Lebanon escalation and Iran insisting in the past days, especially on the mediators, that Lebanon should be part of this ceasefire. Now with what Israel is doing there are many reasons to think that this path isn't really going smoothly.
The Lebanon escalations definitely make people wonder if this is going smoothly. Let's get another update on what's happening here. There's no sound? Oopsie. One sec. Did I just say oopsie? Did I really just say oopsie, bro? Oh my goodness. Sorry. Here it is.
Through the Strait of Hormuz has been stopped. Guys, we were just talking earlier in the hour about there's questions about whether Israel's ceasefire does apply to the fighting in Lebanon. Israel, of course, not agreeing to the idea that they need to halt those military activities in Lebanon. Iran now saying that because those military activities are continuing, that they are stopping passage of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, no official response from the White House yet on this, just breaking in the last few minutes. But earlier in the hour, a few minutes before this, the president did speak with PBS News, and he was asked why Lebanon was still being hit. He told the reporter Lebanon was not included in the deal because of Hezbollah, but that will get taken care of too. He said it's all right. So brushing off concerns there about Israel continuing to attack Lebanon, although now we know major repercussions. Iran now saying they are shutting down passage of oil through the strait because of it. Guys.
Well, all right. So, Megan, we've got the president saying it wasn't included in the deal. At least that is what he apparently said to PBS. And we have the Iranians conceivably indicating that they believe it is included in the deal.
The Iranians do believe that there has to be a cessation of all fighting, including in Lebanon. Israel has been straightforward that they don't agree that it has to include that fighting over with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we saw their heaviest wave of attacks yet just overnight. So that obviously continuing, they believe that was not part of it. The White House had told me Israel had agreed to the ceasefire last night, but clearly perhaps not over this one branch. Now we're seeing the consequences of that.
Megan, thank you. We'll stay on top of it with your help. Our Megan Casella. Speaking of all this volatility, the volatility index.
Okay, so that's your headline. Oil ships passage via Hormuz halted after Lebanon strikes. I mean, well, where's the S&P? That should be a pretty bad headline, right? Yeah, 672.50. Well, this is once again more choppy than not. Trump says Lebanon's not part of it. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt just posted that Lebanon is not part of it. Wall Street Journal says Iran's foreign minister is holding a phone call with Pakistan's army chief right now. And then Iranian state media says we are reclosing the strait. I mean, why not? At this point, why freaking not? Kuwait says a number of facilities of Kuwait Petroleum Corporation and Energy Ministry was attacked by Iranian drones. Look, at this point, Trump's going to have to get involved, and he's going to have to make some phone calls. Even if Lebanon's not part of the deal, he's going to have to get the Israelis to stop attacking. I mean, this just makes him look bad. He's been bragging for the past 24 hours about a ceasefire. If a ceasefire doesn't happen, 671 S&P. Okay, now she's feeling it. Still up 2%, which is nice. But obviously now you're starting to see some key levels at least get back to get back to where they were in the pre-market before the broader pump. Tesla just went red. I mean, theoretically, this is a headline that could erase the entire move today. Like it could, if the, and that's what I said in the morning, if the straight closes again, we give back the gains. If we're doing some proxy drone missile attacks here and there, the market will not care as long as the straight is open. If the straight doesn't stay open, then no, I mean, it's going to continue to be bad. Look at NVIDIA, bro. NVIDIA 185 to 180. Look, I don't think we revisit the Monday lows from last week, but I mean, we have another couple hours of this. We are going to be losing most of the pump. Palantir already lost it. Tesla lost it. SoFi's lost most of it. HUD, I mean, it's a nice 4% move, but it was a lot higher. Microsoft's losing it. Shopify is still holding on to a decent chunk, 5%. Oscar, based on that insider buy, is holding up. IBKR holding up a little bit. Bloom still up 10%. It was up 15%. This is what we should all get a tattoo of. This emoji by Ray. Green, red, green, red, green, red. Saudi oil pipeline damage said to be limited after drone strike. Okay, so that's at least decent. Dude, this is weird, though. I mean, if they're saying Hezbollah's not included in this and the Iranians... See, the thing about this whole thing is that the Iranians have serious leverage now. I mean, they just shut the global oil markets down for the past month, or at least spiked them up pretty heavily because of closing the strait. So if they want Lebanon to be included, I wonder if Trump has the leverage to be like, no, they're not included. Because what if Iran's like, no, we want them to be included? And Trump's like, no. And Iran's like, okay, so we'll close the strait again. I mean, at some point, if you're Trump, you either have to take military action to stop this from happening every single time you try to get something done, or you capitulate and you say, and you call up Bibi and you say, dude, Lebanon's part of it. Don't attack. And if anything, I think that would make the Iranians feel like they just have a lot more power. S&P again revisiting 672. So we bounced off 671.50 here. Bounced off 671.50. Just then, Trump says, oopsie, straight is open again or closed again. At least I didn't say daisy. At least I didn't say oopsie daisy. If I said oopsie daisy, you'd all have permission to throw tomatoes at me. Mid stop streaming. Want your mom to stream? My mom just texted me. She said, I just made 2,500. Dude, my mom is crazy, dude. She said, I just booked a trip. I just booked a trip in... What is this? Dude, she just came back from a trip in Mexico. Where the hell is she? She's like, my Rocket Lab just paid for my trip. Is this some other spiritual retreat or some shit? She booked. I'm trying to go on the website and see what this is. This woman is crazy, bro. This woman is crazy. It's a 2-day trip. Yeah, it feels like another spiritual retreat. It's in the States, so it's not international. 2,500 on Rocket Lab is good enough to cover my trip. Well, at least someone's making money today. There you go. 673 again on the S&P, trying to get back up there. Or she could go back to buy a Rocket Lab. That's also true. She could double dip. Listen, I get it though. That's hilarious. I am selling Rocket Lab to pay for this. Oh my gosh, she just texted me again. I'm also buying my own handbag that I've been waiting to buy. Dude, this woman is okay. We need to just... She sees money and she's just like, what can I buy with this? Like, and that's specifically my mom, dude. She like, my mom, again, my mom's not a business person. She's not a money person. She's never, cared that deeply about finances, but she loves shopping. Like, I think we single-handedly are keeping Amazon in business. Buying a handbag and buying a trip. Okay. There we go. She needs to take out some of that money for the short game taxes. I got her a reminder. It's like, hold on. Not all of that can go up there. Arab nations are worried that sanctions on Iran might be removed soon, allowing Tehran to start charging fees for ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so this is another issue, right? If we remove the sanctions and Iran then thinks, okay, now that we have diplomatic ties to the US and we can engage in free trade, do we have more sovereignty to be able to charge fees in the Strait of Hormuz? S&P, nice bounce off 672 as well. So not really entering that downtrend yet. 671.50 to 673. That is a fair point. NVIDIA as well getting a bounce. Tesla goes green again. Wow, dude, what is this market? You think we're going down and we just flip. We're not fully recovered yet, but Nebius, 119 back to 121. Rocket Lab almost back to 70. Goodness, dude. What, I don't know what headline caused that or if that's just algos. I don't see anything. But this charging fees for ships is not the best thing to see either. Apple, yep, that one's going off. Netflix is Netflix almost 100. I'm not gonna lie, all the headlines we've gotten over the past 30 minutes are bad. Like, they're not good. So the fact that markets aren't really in the sea of red that they were in literally 10 minutes ago, there's not, exactly a sea of red, but I mean, Tesla was red. A lot of these names just started losing. Even software getting a little bit of a bid right there. It's weird that they're actually flipping somewhat green because, I mean, objectively, these headlines are not good. So I'm not fully sure what's happening right now. Got some on-the-ground reporting. I just spoke with a Lebanese colleague who strongly opposes Hezbollah. He was shaken, and the scene described was disturbing. Based on the Israeli attacks. He claims Israeli carried out its largest airstrike campaign on Lebanon this morning. French President Macron, the ceasefire must fully include Lebanon. This is indispensable. We must strengthen support for the Lebanese armed forces so they can fully gain control of their territory. Okay, this is just constant back and forth at this point. At some point, it'll be more cost-effective to build a canal to bypass the Strait of... I mean, dude, I've been thinking about that. Of like, hold on. Can we find a way to... Because do we really want to live in a world for the next 100 years where Iran has control over 20% of the world's oil supply? Through this little-ass freaking strait? We can't use... I know, there's only so much land on the planet, but is there no way to get past this shit? Goodness, little ass strait controlling the entire economy, global economy. Bitcoin, 71,000 right here as well. I don't know, dude. SPY's holding though. SPY's pumping from the lows. You would think, where's crude? Crude's at crude's down. It was at 96. It's at 95. Even though these headlines are not bullish, I guess the market's pricing it in. And still, if the market ends up concluding the ceasefire will persist regardless of all these skirmishes, as per Trump's vocabulary, then maybe that's enough to hold on to this grain and not really give too much of it back. Could more pipelines fix it? Well, yeah, I mean, we covered that 2 days ago that Saudi is working on an alternative pipeline. It's just not the easiest thing to do versus just, have a ship go through the strait itself. I guess that's the broader problem on this. White House report finds stablecoin yields pose limited risk to banks. New analysis based on current economic models suggests concerns over deposit flight might be stated. Where is Circle? Circle was at 101. Now it's at 94.88. Seems like the White House is a bit more bullish on getting that Clarity Act ultimately passed. Again, mortgage rates came in at 6.5 versus 6.1 as of 2 weeks ago. So we still have mortgages that are going up. 94.95 on Circle right there. Nvidia getting a bounce, not at 185 anymore, but still at 181. S&P trying to head back to 674. I guess dip buyer stepped in at 671. Zeta's at 16. Firefly's up 6. Red Cat's up 5. Celestica's up 4. We're getting a little bounce. This is incredible, dude. Even gold up 2% right there. Silver's up 5. I mean, the idea of a trend forming, like, yeah, it feels like it's an uptrend in some sectors. Another sector, like Ondas going, all the defense names getting hit pretty hard. Palantir still down from 155. And now I guess the question is, can we stay? What a freaking mess, dude. Back and forth, back and forth. Let's get coverage. See what else we can find here.
And the question I would pose to you is, why do you believe the 178,000 number that came out on Friday, when there's a 100% chance that number's going to get revised, and the pattern of the past years suggests that's over a 90% chance that number's going to get revised lower? And what isn't mentioned is that for the second month in a row, we had a negative reading on household employment, and that companies, well, you could argue added bodies. In March, they cut the work week by 0.3%, which is a big down move in 1 month. So no, I would take umbrage with the view that the labor market is as healthy as you would suggest. And the economy.
It's not that I'm sorry to cut you off, David.
Yeah.
It's not that I believe necessarily, and for sure, they always get revised lower. What I note is that we had a negative payrolls number the month before, and now we had a sharply positive payrolls number. So that would suggest that momentum has become better.
Yeah, but Sarah, if you look last year, there were probably 4 or 5 months where the number was like the number we just had in March. And then you look at the second revision and it all got revised away. So this is like a classic case of Einstein's definition of insanity. Like I think what me and you should do is come back in 2 months, and then we'll talk about what the March number really was. Yeah. But the reality is that total labor input into the economy, which is hours worked in bodies, aggregate hours worked index, was negative 0.2%, negative 0.2. Average weekly income was negative 0.1. Those two things going down together in the same month is a 1 in 10 event. So I know that it's popular to just talk about the headline. You know, I keep saying, if the headline is all that's important with these employment data, the BLS should just have one number and forget about publishing a whole report. Like, it is a whole report. And then if you go to the JOLTS data and you look at the hiring rate, the quits rate, and the job opening rate, they're all down significantly. And in fact, when you look at the totality of the JOLT survey, which tells you what's happening underneath the surface of the labor market, and these data were for February, it was the worst month for JOLTs since April 2020. So I'm confused when I hear about how strong the labor market is. If the labor market's that strong, why is nominal wage growth decelerating?
Yeah.
I actually agree with that. I mean, I don't think there's any way you can trust the data in the context of non-farm payrolls until we get the revisions. And the revisions are not, I mean, they haven't been nice. S&P back to 672. Dude, this is just back and forth by the second at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think the Fed, when they said the labor market's intact, it's like, okay, the data might show that, but then if the data gets revised, like, how can you really believe that it's fully intact here? Iran tells mediators Islamabad meeting is conditional on ceasefire in Lebanon. All right, they are going to push the limit here. Wall Street Journal, Islamabad meeting is conditional on ceasefire in Lebanon. Trump literally just told PBS Lebanon is not included. It's just either Trump's going to have to say they're included and go back on what he said, or he's going to have to convince the Iranians to not include that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know at this point. This is so exhausting, dude. So freaking exhausting. What type of bag did your mom buy? I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe Michael Kors. She likes that brand. She's not buying a Louis band or a Hermes bag or anything like that. She's not spending that much money on it. Or Chanel. Apparently Chanel is like the brand that like is ridiculously expensive. I just hear about it in like a bunch of songs. People talk about Chanel. But the point is it doesn't matter because we're all going to be holding bags if this freaking ceasefire doesn't stay true. 672.82. Did you talk about Grab? Yes. About 30 minutes ago, we covered it. The major thing was their cash loans. I think that's the best thing that they introduced. And that fintech business is going to get ramped up. That fintech business alone should have the stock trading at $7. So I think when the sentiment gets right in the right direction and they really show that growth in their loans portfolio, you should see some more momentum. S&P 673. 673. Well, that's what you got. I mean, let's ask another question here. Most of you guys said 668 on SPY. If you have dry powder, how much would you allocate now? 10%, 20%, 0%. Let's go 50% plus. So if you have 100 grand cash, would you put 10 grand in based on this ceasefire? Would you put 0 in based on this quote unquote ceasefire? Would you put 50 grand? How would you be thinking of it if you have cash on the sidelines? Hims right there up 1.3. Micron up 7. Micron was 318. Now it's at 405. So even though it's not at 470, still has made a hell of a rebound over the past month. Red Cat is well up 5%. Apple at 258. Okay, 21% say 20, 26% say 10, 38% say 0, 15% say 50. So the 38% that say 0, the question then becomes, well, I think there's two questions, and I think it's very fair to say 0% here as we see all these crazy headlines. What headline is necessary to feel confident enough to deploy any of that capital? That's the first question. And I don't even know what the answer to that is. Maybe Lebanon being included in the ceasefire, who knows? And then the second question is, are you waiting for the lows of March 30th? And that, maybe we're past that, maybe we're not. Tesla right there, 347, barely flipping green on the day. U.S. Embassy in Baghdad says Iran-backed Iraqi army groups carried out drone attacks near diplomatic facility in Baghdad airport on Wednesday. Okay. See, that's also not good. I think literally Connie's like, I leave for 1 hour and we go down. Connie, at this point, you leave for 1 minute and you might end up seeing a full reversal. Yeah, every headline we've read over the past hour is just bad. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. It's not good. The only headline that's been good this morning is that Trump tweet about potentially giving sanctions relief to Iran. Because to me, that signals that he is like legitimately trying to get a deal if he's willing to take off sanctions that we've had on them for the past 15 years. Like, that has to be some level of, okay, we're ready to talk to you. But then the Lebanon news is horrible. The airport news in Iraq is horrible. The Kuwait news is not good. The Saudi Arabia news is not good. The PBS news is not good because Trump is basically admitting Lebanon doesn't matter and Iran says it does. So, I mean, if any of these headlines materialize into serious downside price action by the end of the day, I don't think we could be that surprised by it. I don't think CPI tanks the market. I don't think I think, I don't know, dude. I've covered CPI enough. I've covered CPI 3 years at this point. There are moments where CPI is way lower than expectations. I mean, the most famous one is October 2024. We came in at 2.4%. The market was down 2% that day. It ended up reversing, but it's like the immediate reaction was sell the market when CPI was the lowest it was in 4 years. And then I've seen CPIs where we're at 4.5 instead of 4.7 and the market rallies. So I know CPI is going to be ugly tomorrow, but the point is everyone knows it's going to be ugly. So it's not that much of a surprise anymore. And I feel like if the market wanted to tank on that, it would be tanking today based off the expectation that it's higher. Now, if oil spikes up back to 105 combined with a bad CPI, then yes, 100% CPI probably makes us red. But the market would probably fall before CPI comes out if oil spikes up to 105 before that, because obviously oil would go inverse to stocks. Crude right here, 95.61. 95.61 right now. At this rate, I don't feel comfortable deploying a lump sum of dry powder until next week after the supposed talks in Islamabad. Yeah, and I think that's fair. Either the market rallies like crazy before the talks conclude based on leaks that the talks are going very well, or the talks go horrible, the market dumps, and then you have another opportunity, right? It is, once again, you're never going to legit get the bottom, and hopefully you don't get the top either. There's some sort of middle ground, and that middle ground is subjective for everybody. But I think the way most people have defined it over the past 2 months, which is different from how retail has been just like gung-ho buy the dip over the past 3 years. I think at least the majority of, Steve, Chris, like other retail investors I talked to, it's like, you know what, let me wait. Let me just see what this looks like. Let me get some confirmation of something good happening. And if I have to pay an extra 5%, I don't care, because I don't need to be the guy who got the absolute bottom. Which means, you're going to have to pay a price, literally, that's higher. And that means if we're waiting for these Islamabad talks to end, then I don't think that's horrible either. SMCI is still up 0.5%, and Broadcom still up 4.5. Can you let us know every time your mom sells? It was such a random trade, bro. Because I bought myself Rock Labs. So I was like, you know what? I'll buy it for my mom. But I didn't know there was a freaking ceasefire coming yesterday. So it was like 10 minutes before the close. I was like, you know what? I'll just buy her some shares. But then we got a pump. I mean, literally, we were doing technical Rocket Lab back to 70. We were doing a technical Tuesday, but Jason had to leave in the middle of it. So we didn't even end up doing that many stocks. We did like 15 stocks. And then as soon as he left, we got the like literally he left, and then the ceasefire deal came in, which would have ruined all of the TA anyway. Because, I mean, how can you do TA when the market's up 2% after hours? Like, you have to wait at least a day to see how things settle. And then that's where we got this move. Thoughts on Qualcomm? It should be a catalyst if they are still one of Apple's main suppliers. If Apple gets this foldable phone to get more momentum. But at this point, we don't know if that's happening. All I'm hearing is there's more green to come. Look, in the midst of all these crappy headlines, I still think there will be a deal at the end of these 2 weeks. Maybe I'm down. And I hope for that more so than my portfolio, for just humanity, dude. Like, this constant fighting back. At the end of the day, these are real people. Civilians will become casualties if this continues to escalate. So outside of the portfolio, I think both sides want to come to a deal. But we are in a brand new geopolitical environment where Iran has a lot more leverage than they had in the past. And, in 2 weeks, if we get a deal, it'll be good for markets, but hopefully it'll be good for the rest of the world. It just also alters. I feel like Iran feels a lot stronger than they did a month ago, because now they know they can stop the supply of oil whenever they want. Israel, as per the Wall Street Journal, was unhappy about the announcement and wasn't consulted on the terms of the deal. Wall Street Journal, Israeli Security Cabinet to convene Wednesday and will discuss the Iran ceasefire. Okay, that's similar to the reporting that we saw yesterday from Channel 12 that Israel was not happy about this. Kramer says, I think Apple goes higher. Okay, we're screwed on Apple. We're done. We're done. Forget the Apple bull case. It's over. Iran has always had this leverage. Yeah, Iran's always had this leverage, but they've never actually shut down the strait for an extended period of time in order to combat the U.S. military, at least not in, the modern era. The fact that Trump went in and Iran's first response was, okay, well, we're shutting down the strait the day after, and the world shut down in terms of oil supply. I mean, when's the last time we saw that happen? I feel like it's a rather new phenomena, and now they know that they can do it. And the U.S. didn't attack them at the Strait of Hormuz. We attacked them in other parts of the country, but we did not accelerate a military confrontation at the Strait. We just didn't do it. We didn't escort ships through the Strait. None of that shit happened, even though Trump bragged that it was like none of it happened. Because we, for whatever reason, which is obvious, right? We didn't want to get into a massive confrontation. Trump's did not give the order to start shooting at the Iranian ships that were guarding the strait. And so I think to some extent that, it has to make you feel more confident that you have the ability to protect it and you have real sovereignty over it. If the United States of America, out of all countries, is not going to fight with you at the strait. That's where I feel like they have a bit more leverage now. 673.35 on S&P. You got a clip from Fox News here claiming none of the military objectives have been achieved. Let's take a look at this from Fox this morning.
Say that the president's demands, we have not reached any of those objectives. I have full confidence that the president is going to find some way to make this happen. But he said that we want to dismantle all major nuclear facilities. That has not happened. The end of uranium enrichment on the soil, they're still enriching. The transfer of the enriched uranium stockpiles out of Iran, that hasn't happened. The acceptance of intrusive international inspections, they're still not willing to do that. And they have not suspended their ballistic missiles program. They're still firing them off to stop the production of the long-range missiles. That's just a few of them on the president's proposal. The question is the president using this 2 weeks to give our soldiers a break, a rest, to see if we can get this ultimately done? We'll see.
He does have a point. We haven't achieved anything yet. And Trump knows that, which is why I think they're going to be going hard for these negotiations to see if they can get something done. If you're skeptical and you think this 2 weeks is just a way for soldiers to rest and we're going to go right back at it, then this whole market move is fake. Everything is fake that we're saying. If Trump is more serious than not that he wants to get a deal done, which that's where my bias is, I think he really does want to get a deal done in the next 2 weeks, then there's going to have to be some pretty intense negotiating because as for what we just heard, he's right. We have not got the Iranians to agree to anything that we want them to agree on, unless there is a framework for getting them to that point if we give up sanctions relief and stuff like that. And that's the best case scenario in the next 2 weeks, right? That we give them something, they give us something, and then this comes to an end. 673 on the S&P. We talked about Macron's comments. Saudi Arabia says it's intercepted 9 drones over the past hours. So you still have those drone attacks affecting them. Rich Tech Robotics, smaller company we haven't talked about in a while, expands into Europe with new distribution deal. Rich Tech's up 10%. This thing pumped to 550 on a Microsoft partnership 2 months ago. This one is up 10% on the day. Rock Lab just below $70. Oh, yes. Rocket Lab did do their full ATM. That's another thing that's super bullish this morning. So it was about 6 million shares, 6.72 million. They made about $474 million. Sorry, 7.4 million. And so that's done, which is good. It means, Rocket Lab kind of, if they did this morning or last night, they sold into the strength and they were able to raise a ton of capital by putting out that at the money. And the market didn't even care, right? So it's like, this is what happens when you have these massive algo moves. Like you're able to really use that. Oh, by the way, I was speaking to a VC yesterday. Okay. This is actually some pretty important information. You know how when you invest in a private company, you have a lockup period because, the company wants to incentivize you to hold on to the stock even when they go public? Well, SpaceX has taken away their lockup period, which means if you bought SpaceX years ago, you are not required to hold it for what's conventionally around 6 months. And the reason that I was given was that SpaceX is getting fast-tracked into the indices, which means there's going to be a bunch of fund managers that are going to be forced to buy it. And as a result, they're not requiring the VCs that have funded the company for the past 10 years to actually hold on to the stock, which means when we talk about exit liquidity, first of all, it's not just going to be retail. It's literally the institutional investors that are, literally SpaceX is getting into the NASDAQ, into the S&P. They're fast tracking the index inclusion. So, you're going to have entire institutions that are going to have to be liquidity for the VCs. But then when you have Elon clearing up 30% of the entire float for retail, he's doing that at the expense of the VCs that are going to be dumping this shit at $2 trillion. And the question just becomes, do you think the valuation then becomes meaningful enough to hold on to it? But this is not one of those IPOs that's going to be incentivized with the VCs holding onto their stock. I'm sure some VCs will hold on to it, but many of them will get a massive liquidity event. And I also found out yesterday, apparently these lockup periods are rooted in how the company gets to decide if the lockup. So if when Andro goes public, if Palmer Luckey wants people to hold on to the stock for 6 months, he can make that decision himself. Apparently Elon is foregoing that lockup period, probably because Elon wants a lot of the VCs to make money. They've supported him for years, right? They deserve to. But the question is, who's taking it off their hands? Because for every buyer, there's a seller. For every seller, there's a buyer. And it might end up being retail. Shopify right there, up 5.3 as well. Which indices? The ones I've heard of it are the Qs so far. The NASDAQ, we covered that a couple weeks ago. The NASDAQ is fast tracking the ability for SpaceX to be included. It's going to be in tranches though, right? I don't know. The friend I was talking to yesterday, he said dude, he laughs about it. He's like, he's not some super sophisticated, professional investor managing billions of dollars. He's still a retail investor, but he has a decent level of AUM in his VC firm. And he's just like, dude, this is stupid. He's like, this is not worth 2 trillion, but I'm going to be dumping the shit out of this because if the market wants to give me 2 trillion, then I'm out of it. He's been in it for the past 7 years. And he's also like, he sees these arguments on X and he's like, why don't people just give it a $20 trillion value? He's like, all these people defending it. It's like, all right, give it 15 trillion. Why? At this point, valuations just don't matter here. So now granted, he doesn't have $100 million stake in SpaceX or something. So I don't know if you have a multi-billion-dollar stake, if you can dump it all at once. But the point is, you're not going to be required to hold as aggressively. And that's the notice that he got a couple weeks ago from SpaceX. It is not Steve, although Steve would be itching to dump it at 2 trillion as well if he got it. Any thoughts on Saidu? It's just pumping because of the space narrative. I don't know. I know they had a good earnings a couple weeks ago, but I don't know if this is enough to justify their multiple either. By the way, Anthropic's valuation, we talked about this yesterday. It's at $800 billion in the private markets. It is not 380. Whoever got it in 380 got a freaking steal. It is trading north of 800 billion in the private markets. So that thing's going public at $1 trillion. There's no doubt in my mind Anthropic's going public at $1 trillion. OpenAI, they have to. They just raised at 800. It's just Anthropic and OpenAI are both doing more revenue than SpaceX, which is, like they're just growing way faster. But obviously, you're betting on potential there. And so the question is, how much does that potential hold up? Air Test Systems still up 20% on the day. VC is venture capital. These are people that professionally invest in private companies over public companies. AMD 230, that's still up 4%. Yeah, Zoom's stake in Anthropic is literally, that's such a good point. Zoom invested $50 million in Anthropic. Their market cap is $24 billion. I mean, like, that stake in Anthropic is many, many times more significant now than what Zoom was trading at. The worst thing about this is Sam Bankman-Fried invested when Anthropic was worth $3 billion. His stake today, I think, would have been worth around 17 billion or something like that. And he had to sell it when he liquidated all of his assets when he had to go to jail. Yeah, he invested $500 million in it in April of 2022. And that's when Anthropic was worth $2.5 billion. So if we just do some quick maths, 800 divided by 2.5 is 320 times the 500. I mean, yeah, he was looking at a $16 billion stake. Absolutely crazy. But, now he doesn't have it. Do you still use ChatGPT? Yes, ChatGPT every single day. Perplexity's growth is crazy. They are now doing $450 million in annualized revenue. And Perplexity, a lot of people counted them out. Not that many people cared about them, including myself, quite frankly. I don't have anything against them. I don't use the product. But with Perplexity Computer, which is kind of their new agentic, I guess you could call it, platform to really mobilize agents at scale, multiple agents working together, $450 million of revenue, and they're worth $20 billion. Still aggressive on the valuation, but if that 450 turns into $1 billion by next year, they double it. They're trading at 20 times sales. It's not that crazy for Perplexity, which is just good because it just means the overall AI markets are growing, which is what you want to see. Yeah, SK Telecom staking Anthropic as well. Amazon staking Anthropic, which I still think is being discounted. All of that is seeing a lot more momentum. Okay. What else do we have today? Is that pretty much it, guys? We pretty much done. He invested $500 million. Yes, SBF invested $500 million back in 2022. He invested like freaking $600 million in Robinhood, which also would have been worth a lot of money. It would have been worth $6 billion. Yeah, 10x. It would have been worth literally $6 billion. But he had to sell everything. All right, so the main headline of the day is this ceasefire. We don't. Oh, wow, S&P back to 674. Dude, it's just toying with our emotions. Absolutely toying with our emotions. It was almost down below 670, right back to 674. Crude should be at like 94. Crude's still at 95. Is the Strait open? That is a great question. I don't know, because you had that report that we just listened to that says the Strait is closed until Lebanon is included in the ceasefire. But then you have India and China having their ships go through. So I really don't know. Tansim News, Trump is obligated to accept Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz during the ceasefire. Iran's missile hit rate increased 9-fold before the ceasefire. Iran will certainly not allow the Strait of Hormuz to return to the past. If the agreement is violated, Iran will have no hesitation in withdrawing from the ceasefire. That is from Iranian state media. Now, notice they're saying if the agreement is violated, Iran will have no hesitation in withdrawing. They are not, this is from Iranian state media, they're not saying that the agreement has been violated, which maybe they did in a separate statement. I mean, at this point, it's just really hard to figure out exactly what's happening. But hopefully throughout the rest, I mean, if the straight really was closed, I don't think crude would be at 95. I think we'd be spiking back to 105. So the fact that crude is kind of stable here, down 15%, makes me think maybe the straight is still open. But again, and who are we negotiating with? That's also a big question. It's a very fair question that people who are skeptical of this are asking today. We're not negotiating with the Ayatollah, right? Are we negotiating with the parliament speaker, the president? Like, who exactly is the foreign ministry? No one fully knows. And I think we'll have more of an understanding when the Islamabad talks start in a few days, April 10th. But, that's also confusing. VIX is down 18%. VIX is still down 18% on the day, but we are at 21. Are VIX calls a good hedge? VIX calls have always been a good hedge in general if you want to, hedge against the volatility. Now, granted, they've been a great hedge over the past couple of months. If you're buying VIX calls right here, you have to be more bearish on the ceasefire not being real. Because if the ceasefire is legit, and all this stuff we've been reporting today is just like sideline stuff, it's not that important. S&P trying to make its way back to 675 right here. Then the VIX is not going to give you those massive spikes anymore. I mean, maybe something else could cause it, but it's not going to be this Iran war. I feel like the VIX is just tired after the past couple of months, spiking 10% every other day. So, but that's why it's a hedge, right? It's a hedge against the negotiations not going well. I also think the covered call is a hedge against the negotiations not going well. Rocket Lab back above 70. Nebby is back above 122. Some of these high beta names getting a little bit more momentum right here. SoFi trying to get back to 1670. But now we just got to see if this stuff actually lasts. What just happened with the market? I went to nap, just got a newborn home, woke up and my portfolio cut in half. First of all, congrats on your newborn. That's incredible. Yeah, what happened with the market is Israel attacked Lebanon. The Iranians got mad. Trump says Lebanon's not part of the deal. Iran wants them to be part of the deal. And then boom, you have some stocks that go red. But again, the S&P really not affected today. I mean, individual stocks are always going to go up and down. The S&P is holding, at least as of now, to that 2% move, 2.3%. And if we can keep that towards the end of the day, it feels more bullish than not, at least in the short term. But I guess we'll see how this ends up playing out. All right, cool. So that's what we got today. I'll be back on the close. I'm sure there will be plenty to analyze going into the close on if any of this holds. I know there's been a lot of headlines back and forth. My conclusion today, I don't think today's a crazy day to buy. I bought a little bit today. The only dip that I bought over the past couple of months or past couple of weeks was Rocket Lab. And that wasn't really even an Iran dip. That was more of a SpaceX kind of play for me. And I will continue to hold on to it for that SpaceX IPO. But obviously it'll benefit given its high beta if the Iran war ends. But I don't think it's crazy to buy a little bit today. You know, if I had to vote on this poll, I would say I would pick 20%. If I had 100 grand, I think 20 grand today is not crazy. You have a lot more confirmation. Obviously, if you want to be more conservative, 10 grand. I wouldn't be zero. But then again, that's just because I've been waiting for confirmation. We got the confirmation today, at least of somewhat of an end to this. Maybe it's all fake. You got to take a risk at some point on betting on something's real or not. I think those talks are going to go more well than not. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe the ceasefire is over and Iran closes the strait and we go right back to zero. But if not, I do think this is the signal a lot of people have been waiting for. And you pick your favorite stocks and they're still probably on sale. And you take a little bit of a risk here. But I do feel a bit better today buying here than I did a couple of days ago. Now, granted, names that have gone up and down, like AXTI, that was down 20% on Monday, it was up 20% today. I'm not buying this thing today. Like that type of volatility on a small cap, I'm not touching. But, you know, if you've been waiting to buy NVIDIA, I don't think 180 is crazy. Grab, I don't think 369 is crazy. Hood, I don't think 70 is crazy. Rock Lab, I don't think 68, 70 is crazy. Broadcom, I definitely don't think this is crazy. Now, Broadcom was a much better deal a couple of days ago, but you have a lot more certainty now. And you have an Anthropic deal that really probably is not priced in. If Anthropic's growing at this rate. Broadcom is going to get a lot of orders for those TPUs. So you have more fundamentals. I mean, Marvell, this has been a great stock the past couple of weeks. 114 got the NVIDIA investment, is now starting to really break out back to those all-time highs. This one buying into strength, maybe a little bit aggressive. Same thing like ARM. This one you're buying into heavy strength. But a name like Oracle, which is down from 350, gave up the entire earnings move from 170 to 144. Yeah, you might not have got it at 138, but at 144, is it that bad of a deal? No. So the question just becomes, how bullish are you on the extent of this ceasefire actually happening or not? All right, cool. That is what we got. Word of the day. Let's end it off here. And I'll be back tonight on the close. We'll see what else happens from here. Greece will ban social media for people under 15 starting in 2027. Wow. Random, but that is pretty interesting. I wonder how they're going to enforce that ban. Banning? I mean, it's probably, honestly, might be the solution to all this teenage cyberbullying and stuff. But I wonder how they would do it. Word of the day. I've heard this word before. Quintessential. Representing the most perfect or typical example of something. That trade was quintessential, simple setup, clear catalyst, disciplined execution. Classic word for this is exactly what it should look like. I mean, look, a ceasefire, oil going down, VIX down 20%, quintessential price action would dictate the S&P has a massive day, which it's having right here. We've added about $1.7 trillion of market cap on this 2.28% gain. And the question is, can we hold on to it till the end of the day? Do we really need to do a pronunciation on this? There's no way I'm saying this wrong. There's no freaking way I'm saying this wrong. It's quintessential.
Quintessential.
Yeah, that's... You guys doubted me on that one? Actually doubted me on that? That's actually sad to know that you guys doubted me on that. Mom got the quintessential. Dude, I got to call her out. What trip is she talking about? She's like, just booked my trip, dude. Goodness gracious. She gets a little bit of money. She's done. The worst thing is she just got back from a trip in Mexico in February. She's living her best life, bro. Shout out to Rocket Lab. Shout out to Peter Beck for helping her do that. All right, I'm out. I'll be back on the market close, and I'll see if I can get some people on the show today as well to kind of help analyze and break down what's playing out, and we'll hopefully see if this momentum can still last. What about Singapore meetup? Okay, so I will have more details on it, but let me link the Chicago meetup right here. May 9th, that is happening. And then Singapore is June 27th. I'll probably talk about it more on Friday and give you guys more details on it. I know we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about it, but the venue is confirmed, location is confirmed, and the date is confirmed. It is June 27th for Singapore. And I am very excited for that. Chicago is May 9th. And hopefully we have a bull market as we head into these meetups going into the summer. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys on the market close. Bye, everyone.